I witnessed someone's full main character moment. Divas and heroes reveal themselves. I went for a family day out with the in-laws. Mother-in-law turned up late, insisted all the kids stop playing to take a photo with her, and then left 5 minutes afterwards. She paid £25 for the privilege. I'm so glad she has a photo to preserve the beautiful memory of spending 5 minutes with her grandkids and asking them to take a photo. What a precious moment. Me and all the women in the team are having a meeting with management about the pattern of misogynistic behavior we'd experienced in the department, when a senior manager interrupted to say, "I just wanted to say that as a man, this meeting is very hard for me." Reminds me of my dad's take on the Barbie movie. At dinner afterwards, he said, "I've been thinking about it and I realized that actually the movie is about Ken and his struggle to be seen." I was speechless. I agreed to be maid of honor for my best friend. Meanwhile, I'd planned my sister's baby shower months ahead, mailed invitations, and coordinated family flying in to surprise her. The bride knew all of this and was invited. Then she moved her Nashville bachelorette weekend to the same weekend as the shower. When I pointed this out, she said, "Well, I hope you make the right choice." My maid of honor dress went to a girl who needed one for prom. When my brother got married, the bride's maid of honor commandeered the photographer at the reception to take a series of pictures of her and her family. She had just gotten married a few months before, too. She and the bride are no longer friends. I think that monster was the maid of honor that your friend deserved. A friend and I were getting coffee in this cute little book and coffee shop. A woman came in, clearly filming herself browsing. She bought a coffee, sat down, took some selfies of herself with her coffee and book, and then just left. She didn't even drink her coffee. She left the book on the table with her coffee. I don't think she quite has the concept of coffee table book down. Girl I used to work with is a micro influencer, like 2,000 followers on TikTok. For a while, every time a customer came up to her to ask her for help, she'd ask if they knew her from TikTok and wanted a picture. She'd ask, and if they said no, she'd turn it into, "Oh my god, you should follow me." Girl, no one gives an F. Oh no. I mean, that's just as ridiculous as some of the others, but somehow it makes me feel more sad for them than anything else. I believe in you, micro-influencer. Not in the sense of you ever being successful in that walk of life, but that eventually you'll find something more fulfilling to do. I mean, we laugh, but at a certain point you kind of have to admire the dedication. When this fails, she'll be well-positioned to jump into sales. Not many people are comfortable being embarrassed or rejected regularly, and those that are tend to thrive in those roles. Okay, I think some people are missing the point. Even ethical, non-pushy salespeople deal with discomfort and rejection. It's an admirable skill whether you agree with her influencer narcissism or not. A 19 or 20-year-old kid at the DMV who couldn't get his license because he failed the driving test. Again. The person helping him was patient at first, but eventually they started repeating stuff back to him louder and louder so everyone could hear how stupid he was. He was adamant that because he had spent X amount of money paying to take the test so many times, that he should just get the license. And of course, the kid's mother was there to argue on his behalf that in spite of failing the test, he should get the license. It's worth noting that he was definitely not disabled in any noticeable way, unless we're counting off-the-charts self-absorbed narcissism as a disability. The kid just got louder and whinier and more belligerent at each stage of the circular conversation, and eventually the security officer gently bounced him from the establishment. He screamed nonsensical profanity on the way out, and his mother was muttering a bunch of curses at them too. I know that this is a cliche that people on the internet use, but I swear that as soon as they were out the door, we all clapped for that security guy. Someone who started a long-term Facebook group and community tragically self-deleted. Everyone was upset and posting condolences in the group, and then this guy writes a novel-length post about how much he knew the guy, but 90% of it was this guy boasting about his own achievements. That reminds me of a funeral I went to for a college student who died in an accident. He was swimming with his teammates in a local creek, went underwater, and never came up. And this one girl stands up and talks for 15 minutes about how sad she is and how much his death has impacted her, knowing that life is short and she needs to live her life to the fullest. Maybe 30 seconds of that 15-minute diatribe even mentioned the kid who died. She was so cringe. I was really angry for his family and actual friends. All of these remind me of a wedding I went to. During the reception, the bride's older brother went up to give a speech. He went on to list all of his achievements growing up and how proud everyone in the family was of all of his achievements, and how he's so happy that his younger, less accomplished sister finally gets to step out of his shadow for one day and finally gets to be in the spotlight for once. Oh my god. I was walking past a florist stand and a girl danced up and picked up a single gerbera posy in a cutesy manner and was about to walk off when the florist shook his head and snatched it off her. I think she honestly thought she was in the romantic montage of a movie, but she wasn't. My kid was diagnosed with a serious illness at age 4. She's all good now, more than a decade later. At the time, though, a family member who can't tolerate not being the center of attention flew back from a temporary overseas position that was supposed to last like a year. I was overwhelmed in the hospital for 2 weeks during my kid's initial diagnosis. I lost 6 pounds the first week, just silently sobbing in the shower every night. Said family member called me bawling because I hadn't celebrated their coming home enough. When you're at an intimate concert, there's a brief, intentional silence in the middle of a song, and some mother fricker decides to scream and ruin the moment. Same thing with stand-up comedy. Since the comic is speaking directly to the audience, it can seem like a conversation instead of a performance. There's always one person that keeps responding back to their rhetorical questions or trying to make jokes back. Completely ruins the tension and comic relief for everyone else. I manage a bakery. One night a woman came by after the doors were locked and lights were turned down. She hammered on the door and then tried to knock the door down when staff wouldn't let her in. She screamed and hit the door for a while before giving up. The next day she left reviews on multiple platforms about how terribly she'd been treated. When I called her back, she played the victim, and I had to let her know that I'd reviewed the cameras and she seemed rather threatening. I wouldn't have let her in either. Eventually, she did drop it. A few days later, she sent the shop an email asking for us to post flyers, collaborate on social media and stuff to promote her business. What the frick? My wife's sister got cancer, and my wife correctly predicted that their mother, who can't deal with not being the main character, would be thrilled. A sick daughter? She could play the, "Oh, I'm brave and noble because my daughter is sick" card for everyone. Nobody else would get attention as long as she was in such anguish worrying over her poor, poor child. As a bonus, she didn't have to be ill, she just got to collect sympathy while someone else suffered. It was a win-win. She did bugger all to actually help, of course. The sister-in-law did pull through in the end. I currently have a coworker that's so oblivious to how she affects other people, I think it qualifies. For example, if we're all doing the same task that's difficult or gross or unpleasant, all she'll talk about is how unpleasant it is for her and want us to all commiserate and pitch in to do some of her work so that she has to do less of it. She seems to think that if we don't complain about something, we actively like it. As you can guess, she's becoming less popular by the day. None of the rest of you matter. Stop expecting Her Majesty to do the exact same thing as you peasants for the same pay. It's unfair and persecution. Girl at work who thought she had the right to know everything about everyone found out one of our mechanics, completely different department from where she worked, had recently had a baby. Instead of congratulating him, she just stood there in front of him, blocking his way, and said, "Why did I not know about this? I didn't even know your wife was pregnant," in a tone that suggested he'd failed her and had been withholding info she was entitled to. He replied, "You don't need to know everything," and walked away. It was glorious. There was this one wedding I attended years ago where the best man proposed to his girlfriend in the middle of his speech for the newlyweds, hijacking another person's wedding. Classic. Probably 20 years ago, I was hanging out in downtown Seattle when some drunk dudes got in an altercation with police outside a bar. Like half a dozen cops were wrangling guys who were resisting, typical nighttime city crap. Then this guy with a giant beard just walks through them all like he parted the Red Sea. They moved out of his way. Everyone just stopped what they were doing as he was walking through the chaos, and then resumed after he passed. As he was walking by the bar, he grabbed a drink and a piece of pizza that was just sitting on a table, and walked off into the night. I don't know who you are, but I'll always remember you, giant pizza Viking. Probably my own kid. Penalty shootout at his primary school sports day. He would have been maybe 6, and he scored a goal. Every other kid just returned to their place in line, win or lose. Not my guy. No, he followed it up with a flat-out lap of the pitch with his shirt over his head, and then a massive knee slide towards the crowd like it was the frickin' World Cup. It was genuinely funny, and everyone was in stitches, but at the same time I was like, dear God, what am I raising? A guy I went to high school with made a long post to announce big changes in his life, mainly his new job selling roofs door to door. It went on for several paragraphs about how hard he's worked on his degree, it was his associate's online degree, which I'm not knocking, but you'll understand in a minute, and how he had been job searching for months for someone to give him a chance. He had interviewed at my place of employment and didn't get the job because he took off his shoes and sat cross-legged in his chair and wasn't wearing socks, and how his wife had supported and loved him so much. He went on about how he's the man now that he always wanted to be, and the rest of the year was looking up. In the very last sentence, he mentioned offhand that he's also proud of his wife for getting her master's degree while working full-time, and also that she'd given birth after she graduated, and that because he's such a great guy, she gets to take a few weeks off from her nursing job to recover. Yes, his wife worked full-time as a nurse while pregnant and still earning a master's degree. I'm assuming she was the one paying all of the bills while he spent months being unemployed. And he's giving her the gift of recovering, and he genuinely believed he was the one that deserved praise. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? I saw a guy at a funeral take a selfie with the casket, adjust his lighting, and then do a thoughtful pose for his Instagram story. Like, bro, even the dead guy is tired of your cringe. Buddy reaches out and closes the coffin lid in disgust. Went to Tokyo last year, and there was someone who I assume was a TikTok influencer who stood in the center of the Shibuya Scramble, looked to the sky, opened her arms, and began spinning around as if making a girl power travel blog. She even had a cameraman filming her during the 30 seconds that everyone could cross. Shibuya crossing is literally like 50% or more just people doing that now. As soon as the cross light turns to walk, there'll be multiple people who sprint to the middle to try to get a photo or video before the crowd forms. Every time now. At a remembrance for my wife's co-worker who had passed away from cancer, her boss, who is a vile and all-encompassing narcissist, showed up much later than everyone else, made a huff outside, and proceeded to tell everyone, "I can't be here for long. My family member passed recently and I can't deal with funerals or seeing dead people." It wasn't a viewing, just a gathering of people to give their condolences to the family who lost their father, husband, or son. And if it was something you couldn't handle, why did you show up in the first place? See you next Tuesday! My father was dying. My day was a cycle of getting up early and sitting with him before heading in to work, going back to the hospital when I knew the doctor made his rounds, back to work, rinse, repeat, etc. Everyone on staff knew exactly what was going on. One of my direct reports complained to our manager that I didn't respond when she said good morning one day. Which, please, I can't even remember if I saw you, much less heard you, and if I had, it was most definitely not a good morning. Who goes straight to HR when that happens? The hostile work environment fairy? Honestly, I can't contemplate even caring if someone didn't answer me back in my zombie-like walk through the office, when I'm half-heartedly greeting people just to keep up appearances. Just do your job in misery like the rest of us and go home. Famous comedian approached my friend's girlfriend in the airport while he was off buying something. My friend came back and the comedian acted as if he should know who he was. So my friend asked him, "Am I supposed to know who you are?" And the comedian was visibly taken aback. It was hilarious. After he left, my friend turned to me and said, "Yeah, I know who he is, but he's an idiot." My friend is a legend. I once saw a woman at a grocery store stop dead in her tracks when her song came on over the speakers. She closed her eyes and dramatically mouthed along while leaning on her cart like she was filming a music video. Everyone just walked around her while she had her protagonist moment in the frozen foods aisle. A friend of mine came out to me. I congratulated her. For the next month, I was in and out of the hospital with a mystery illness. Even when I'm not in the hospital, I'm horizontal trying to recover. My friend tells me a month later she felt I was queerphobic because I wasn't happy enough for her during the times we talked. And it's like, 1, I was literally trying not to die, and 2, I came out 4 years before she did. Do not cite the old magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written. This one time, this lady and this guy helped a homeless person outside of the bar by talking to him for 5 minutes. They spent the rest of the night going on about it to the bartender and acting like heroes. Like really doing a whole play-by-play of what had happened and how they just had to step in and help someone in need. The bartender visibly just wanted them to stop talking. I was sitting on my own, and they insisted on sitting opposite me to have a talk with me about life and what it truly takes to be selfless. I snapped at them eventually, which got them to leave me alone. Was standing in a decent line at the post office, like 20 people. Everyone was minding their own business. An older woman, maybe in her 50s, walks in and exclaims, "This is a huge line! This is ridiculous!" very loudly. One of the postal workers just looked up, assessed she was going to be an issue, and said, "Mom, I'll help you now." So this chick got to skip the whole line. I guess that's one way to work the system. People who record themselves at the gym. I don't mean recording your form or a PR for the memory books. I mean self-proclaimed fitness influencers getting their knickers in a knot because you've walked in front of the tripod they set up in front of the dumbbell rack. I used to be part of the local comedy scene. One of the most known individuals at the open mics was a trust fund baby whose dad was a judge. He never told a joke that he didn't steal from someone else and was rarely in a lineup. After 18 months of social networking, he went to the local newspaper and declared he was headed to New York to become famous. I heard he ended up in rural Wyoming because his dad didn't want him embarrassing him anymore in the hometown. Oh, no specific example, just my cat on your average Tuesday. Guy proposed during our med school graduation, which was on Mother's Day, to a classmate he was dating when we were all on stage. They actually stopped the graduation and the dean was also involved. I booed. On a crowded bus, packed to the nuts. Pulled up to the last stop before leaving downtown. A few more people were able to crowd on, but the driver had to say, "Oh, sorry everyone, you guys have to wait for the next bus." 5 to 10 minute wait, not in horrible weather. This one person decides they must get on and kicks up a fuss at the door. Refuses to get out of the doorway so that the driver can close the door. Yelling that they worked hard all day and they deserve a ride home now. This is discrimination. Why are you denying me a ride? Viewers, let me tell you there were probably 20 other people waiting behind them. They weren't the only person being denied a ride. The driver tells them he can't safely fit one more person on, "Please step back," numerous times, and then he radios dispatch to send police. We all groan because they'll take 10 to 15 minutes to arrive, and then the driver will have to give a statement, and we'll be delayed half an hour minimum because this person thinks they're special. We may as well all get off because the next bus will be here before the police get here. But that bus is going to be full too because it's rush hour, so probably more like an hour added to everyone's commute because of this one guy. Then a big guy forces his way to the front of the bus. He wasn't far behind the driver, but it was fully packed. He steps up to this D-bag and pushes them off the doorstep. The driver slams the door and takes off. Everyone claps and says thanks. I'm not sure who the main character was in this story, but I guess maybe this serves to highlight that there can be two sorts. The actual heroes who step up, don't make a scene and become famous anyway, and the former guy. It was a school funeral. The music teacher asked a few of the band students to play at the graveside service. One of the band mums thought her kid was a virtuoso and took a million pictures of him during the service. It was so embarrassing. I work with a real narcissist. He owns 1/3 of the business. It was a blue-collar business. We help people fix their locks and stuff. But this guy insists on staying on the floor and has no leader or owner responsibilities. Only the paycheck for those things. He likes to be where he can manipulate people hands-on. Everything is about him, and he does exactly what he wants when he wants. You can't really delegate to him because he'll do the opposite or nothing at all. Or he'll make it so that it's on his terms. He'll constantly lie about what the customers say to make it seem like we misunderstood something or made a mistake in the interaction ourselves. Or, if he does what you say, he's luring you in, making you think he's actually alright, and then it backfires. Always. He will belittle you if you make a mistake, and play the victim if you call him out. If things get too bad, he'll whine to his sister, who'll then yell at her husband, the brother-in-law, who'll tell people to leave him be. Rinse and repeat. There's no way of removing him, period. He has a desk behind mine, I have to be around him a lot. It's exhausting, and it's a real science how to navigate around him. He is in fact a textbook narcissist. Luckily, he doesn't have the intellect that many other narcissists have. A few months ago, I took my daughters to the aquarium. They were under 1 at the time, so my partner and I both had them in a baby carrier so we could get around easier and not be in anyone's way with a huge double pram. It's a very busy aquarium, and in the underwater section, there are signs everywhere telling you which side to walk and which side to stand on if you want to stop and look for longer. A lady placed her phone against the glass with a portable light attached, and started filming herself looking around as the animals swam around her. Can you guess which side she was standing on? It was so cringe. I also hate when people record in public places without other people's consent with the intention of posting it online. I used to have a friend that acted like those live streamers, before streaming was a thing. Always screaming, making jokes that weren't funny, putting other people down. The guy was always talking about getting with hot chicks, but in the 4 years I knew him, I never saw a woman get near him unless she was getting paid. He almost went to jail because he thought it would be funny to scream at some kids while we were driving. He set the foundation for the hate I have for live streamers. Please, people, tell your children you love them and give them attention. Years ago, I lived in Southern California, and some friends and I went down to Rosarito, Mexico for a long weekend. While we were at the border crossing on the way back, a guy in front of us in line told the federales, "I'm an American citizen. Your Mickey Mouse laws don't apply to me." They dog-walked him to a back room, and I assume gave him a comprehensive lesson on the concept of national sovereignty. People admit their biggest intimate regrets. The worst bedroom disasters ever told. Mine happened about 5 years ago. My now ex-girlfriend had just left me for a girl, and I was feeling pretty down and lonely. I didn't think I was good enough to meet a girl in real life, so I ended up meeting this woman on an internet dating site. She looked a little large in her pics. All of them were from the chest up, but I kind of like women with a little bit of meat on their bones, and I'd just been broken up with in a crappy manner, so I thought, what the heck? Well, I showed up at her house, and she is way, way bigger than her pics led her on to be. Like, she was at least 350 pounds, if not closer to 500. And, well, you guessed it, I went through with it anyway. In the middle of us doing it, she started wheezing, like seriously wheezing. Naturally, I finished real quick, oh my god, and spilled all over her gigantic rear. Which smelled awful, by the way. Again, I have nothing against plus-size people, but this lady was big enough to where I'm guessing she couldn't wash herself properly. So yeah, we'd been doing canine style as that was the only way that it was possible, and since I was done, I stood up and walked around to see if she was alright. At this point, I'm a bit worried that she's going to die, and that I'd actually finally fulfilled that life goal of effing someone to death. Slightly tempered by the fact that her kids were also sleeping in their rooms. Again, this wasn't my finest hour, folks. Still wheezing and breathing even more heavily, she points me to her bathroom, which looked like it hadn't been cleaned in a year and literally had cat turds laying around the floors. I get her inhaler. This woke up her oldest kid, who walked into her bathroom to see me in my boxers and her still completely undressed, under a sheet luckily. I had to introduce myself to him, but fortunately his mum had gained enough of her breath back to yell at him to go back to bed. I ended up staying there for about 30 to 45 more minutes just to make sure I wasn't going to make an orphan out of this kid I'd just awkwardly met. Wow. Writing all of this down, I think I'm going to go take a shower now. In short, I did the deed with a 400-pound woman, almost killed her, and her kid walked in on us. I did the deed with my ex-girlfriend while we were in the same bed as her brother. Looking back, what the frick was I thinking? So, to explain, my ex, who we'll call Stacy, and her brother, Angelo, were going to a friend's house to keep her company because she was house-sitting. So I go alone. It's all pretty boring, just drinking and chatting and watching Charmed. So it gets late and we're ready for bed. That friend only had one spare double bed, so we all crashed in that. Thanks to the booze, I was feeling quite ready for things, so while I was spooning her, I just slipped it in. It wasn't your usual bedroom fun times, it was very slow and tame, so that we wouldn't wake her brother. As far as I know, he knows nothing about it. Oh wait, I just remembered that her brother also walked in on me splooging on her face one time. That poor guy. Well, this was more traumatizing than anything, but hey, being given a down-under kiss in the back room of a club, pretty out of character for me. This girl had wanted to have fun, and I hadn't lost my V-plates at that point, so who was I to disagree? She gets up, goes to get a Johnny, and is skipping merrily back to my half-undressed body when she trips, hits her head on the table, and passes out. I kinda didn't know what to do. I was underage in a club and had an unconscious girl and a rapidly growing pool of blood next to me. Turns out blood flow to the scalp is pretty ferocious. To top things off, I'm excited and rigid. 3 hours and an ambulance later, she's getting the last of 12 stitches in her head and kissing me on the cheek as thanks for getting her to a hospital. And that's how I almost lost my virginity. Honestly, congratulations on doing the least shameful thing in these stories so far. And actually, good person points for getting her help. You'd think that would be a basic qualifier of humanity, but I'm not sure that every guy I've met would have done that. Now, I've done a quick read ahead, and I'm not sure, honestly, how I'll read some of these without gagging. So here goes. This wasn't so much gross, but regrettable. Allow me to set the scene. There's a pool in my backyard, driveway separated by gate about 15 feet away. So my then girlfriend and I decided to fool around in my pool. Parents weren't at home, you see. Things keep going, and eventually we just start doing it. I'd just lowered my trunks and moved her bottom piece to the side. Boom. Mum sneak attacks. Coming through the driveway gate to say hello. Noticing we're both in the pool, don't you see? She was vaguely aware that we were dating, so she didn't pay any care to the fact that my girlfriend was sitting on me. I didn't have time to pull out or maneuver my nether regions away, so I just pulled my girlfriend closer and made it look like she was floating on my lap. Forced to carry a conversation about the day's otherwise mundane events with my mother while still coupled to my girlfriend. Didn't finish and didn't want to talk to either of them for the rest of the day. In short, looked my mother in the eye and had a conversation with her while joined at the crotch to my then girlfriend in a swimming pool. Buddy, I've got news for you. She knew. Oh, that's the best part. She knew and stayed anyways, enduring the horrible awkwardness of it to completely screw up that encounter for that guy. I dated a girl who we'll just say was less vanilla than anyone I'd been with at that time. I was pretty new to anything beyond the most basic sort of relations, so I kind of figured, whatever she's into, I'll give it a try and see how it goes. We started out pretty basic. In the butt, dominating or submissive play, some light throttling, and then she tells me she wants me to F her face. I'm thinking she kind of just means a rough down-under kiss, but no, she's talking about full-on throat pounding. Okay. We get started at it, and I'm kind of digging it, trying hard to take it slow so that I don't hurt her, but getting down in there. She pulls away for a second and says, harder. So I oblige. She keeps signaling to go harder and deeper, which I do until I'm thrusting right down into her throat, which I can see as she's laying on her back with her head hanging off the edge of the bed. Really impressive suppression of the gag reflex, to be honest. She's got tears in her eyes and makeup running. It's getting pretty hot, and to my surprise, I find out that I'm really into this. I'm just about to get there, and then all of a sudden her eyes go wide and throw up explodes out of her face. And I mean from every possible exit. It's on my nethers, my legs, all over her face and chest, the bed and the floor, and she's still coughing it up. And in the middle of all of this, I reach the moment and start concluding on her face. She's laying there, crying. I run to the bathroom, jump in the shower, and promptly throw up as well as I'm trying to wash myself off. The both of us spent about 10 minutes recovering, and then about the next 40 minutes cleaning up. I was gagging the whole time. I'm pretty sure that's the last time she ever wanted to do that. In short, throat effed a girl until she blew chunks on me. I went finito on her as she was doing so, and then threw up myself in her shower. I don't regret this so much, but I'll admit it was certainly gross and disgusting. This new girl moved into an apartment right below mine. The landlord gave her my roommate's number so we could work out parking spaces, and she hit us up to see if we wanted to get a drink at the corner bar. She was already pretty drunk when we showed up, as were we, to be honest. We had a few more drinks at the bar and eventually walked back to our building. She took us to her place, and we continued to drink in her kitchen. She then proceeded to start taking off her clothes, apologizing for each item, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's just too hot to be wearing a shirt." And eventually, she's just standing there undressed, and after a long silence, my roommate, God bless him, says, "So, do you want to do it with the both of us, or—" "Okay," she cuts him off. We look at each other, shrug, and follow her to the bedroom. Now, at one point, I'm doing her from behind, while she's going south of the border on him, and she starts begging me to stick it in her rear. I've never done that, so I enthusiastically want to oblige. I ask if she has any lubricant, and she points down next to the bed. I look all over, but all I can find is an unmarked bottle with a spritzing top. I've never used the proper stuff, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be in a bottle like that. Is this it? Mm-hmm. Okay, whatever. I spray some on. Sniff, sniff. Oh, this is perfume. I've just perfumed my downstairs. I tell her it's not. She sighs, opens a cabinet that I hadn't even seen, gives me the real stuff and goes back to work on my roommate. In retrospect, I really should have been worrying about the possible effects of perfume on her rear end or on my downstairs, but it didn't occur to me at the time. Anyway, we get oiled up, I go in, good time had by all. But that wasn't the gross part. my roommate and I switch places. Now, she's on her back while he's got his gear in her rear, and she's going south of the border on me. I decide to finish and go all over her chest. Now that that's taken care of, I'm getting that come down feeling as the reality of the situation washes over me. Here is a girl that I've met 3 hours prior. I've just done the deed with her, with my roommate, and her head is still in my lap, moaning while he continues to pummel her from behind. I've never had tripartite relations before. Before this, I'd actually only ever been intimate with one woman at this point in my life. What the frick is going on? Before I have a chance to really grasp any of these questions, she suddenly bolts out and runs out of the room. I looked at my roommate in confusion and he says, "Oh dude, she just crapped on me." And sure enough, there was duty all over him and a nice brown stain on the bed. Oof. We'd literally effed the S out of this girl. In short, my roommate and I jointly whoopied with our new neighbor and she duked all over him. I have a question for you viewers. Is it possible for me to say that I love this job and yet still regret every decision in my life that led to me reading this particular story? Let me know your perspective in the comments, or don't. I don't know if I ever want to look at this story again. My God, changing the language was an ordeal, let me tell you. Accidental duty finger. What's the protocol on that? Do you just tell her? I mean, I just pulled it out of there. The protocol is Simba. Oh God, well thanks, this comment made me throw up. Not because it was gross, which it is, but because I'm sick and I was laughing so hard that I threw up. 9 out of 10 would laugh barf again. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Did the deed with my girlfriend while she had a yeast infection. And here's the best part, I didn't know she had one. So before I finished the deal, I went down there like nobody had ever been down there before, she loved it, and then we did it properly. 2 days later, I had a bunch of little white lumps on my tongue, my throat was so sore I couldn't talk, and my downstairs was sore and on fire. Turns out I had a male infection in both my mouth and on my Johnson. I got a yeast infection from my female ex because neither of us knew that guys could contract them. It's just really rare, apparently. Best part was my doctor, who was female. It would be an exceptional case for a man to contract a yeast infection from a partner like this. Then she inspects my gentleman's downstairs. Huh, well, I guess you're exceptional. I was sitting in a guy's lap once when he had his hand up me from behind. Jesus. I have this thing where I like to keep a full bladder. It makes things feel better, probably related to the pressure down there. Anyway, I wound up emptying said bladder on him. We broke up that night. He and I were no more than fun buddies for about a week. I don't even remember having feelings for him, and I think he felt the same way. So don't worry everyone, everyone's fine, and I didn't even shed a tear. You know, these stories make me feel better about every decision I've ever made in my life. I used a toy lightsaber as an adult toy on my girlfriend one time. I have no idea why or how it happened, I was just playing with it in her room while she was laying on the bed undressed. Next thing I know, I'm holding a 3-foot-long lightsaber with buzzing sound effects while my girlfriend is moaning away. I felt so Jedi. Girlfriend sucked a kidney stone out of my death stick. Oh my God. Pain level 9,000. End story. Oof. I once serviced a girl with a baguette covered with a prophylactic. We got it about halfway in. I also got it on video. This girl was up for anything, but the file transfer failed and I accidentally overwrote it. I should clarify the baguette was 4 months old, stale and hard as a rock. My friends still refer to her as Baguette Bardot. My girlfriend and I met while we were tree planting, which as you can imagine is a fairly dirty profession. A bunch of people decided to start a no showering contest to see who could go the longest without showering. Now, a tree planting season is typically 2 months, so this contest was pretty real. Anyway, this cute girl decided to do the contest, so I decided to do it too. That girl and I ended up doing the deed every night for 2 months, without ever having showered, even after working 12-hour days in the dirt. You know what? Screw you guys. That was some of the best whoopee I've ever had. We were like filthy love animals, taking joy in each other's natural scents. I bet I tasted awful though. Oh, and I almost frickin' forgot the best part of this story. Before she met me, She'd only been with women. We've been dating for 3 years now. I guess my smelly downstairs won her over. I mean, how dare you bring your bragging into this cesspit of shame and regret? Ooh la la, look at me, I got a long-term partner into me based on nothing more than my overpowering musk. Go frick yourself with a stale baguette. Ugh, I think I need to lie down after this video. It's been a while, so I guess I can share. I was around 18, my first girlfriend, we were experimenting with different things. So we were doing the deed and I had my middle finger in her rear. Yeah, I know. It was all cool and exciting until her little brother ran in screaming, "You're doing it, aren't you?" My girlfriend jumped like a scared cat and broke my finger. In short, broke my middle finger in my girlfriend's butt. Short version, used to have huge curly hair, like Claudio from Coheed or Blake from Workaholics. Went to a party, got frickin' hammered along with everyone else, started hooking up and moved to a bedroom. Thought I'd go south on her to impress, ended up barfing on her downstairs area. She sat up and returned the favor directly into my hair. We were so grossed up that we both kept expelling our stomach contents. I remember blowing chunks into my cupped hands, trying to prevent it from getting everywhere, and trying to throw it out the window, only to realize there was a screen on the window. It was an absolute frickin' disaster. I mean, this is disgusting and hilarious at the same time. It reminds me of that Family Guy episode where they all drink Ipecac. Who wants chowder? Met a really hot girl while out with a few friends. She approached me, and we really hit it off. Went back to her apartment at the end of the night and began to make out. For some background, I'm pretty short, 5'5", and I have a baby face. She went on to say how this is why she was attracted to me, and she thought I was cute. I'm pretty shy around girls, and I don't hook up much. So by this point, I'm smitten and start really getting into it. That's when she suggests taking it up a notch. She pulls out this novelty t-shirt and pants. They're both supposed to look like a rabbit when worn together. It has this cartoonish belly of a rabbit on the front of the t-shirt, and the pattern of a small rabbit's tail on the back of the pants. I sort of shyly go, we could just keep making out if you want. But she talks me into it, and a few minutes later, we're doing a whole heap of completely non-bedroom related stuff that she found stimulating while I'm dressed as a cartoon rabbit, and really just not feeling in the mood the further we go. In short, didn't get to do the deed, dressed up as a rabbit. I guess I still literally got some tail for a while. Hey, have you guys ever tried Dave's Insanity Sauce? Well, it's frickin' hot as hell. Not enjoyable and it has no flavor, and that's from someone who loves spicy food. So I had a bottle of it when I was in high school. I used to mess with my friends and just put a dab on the rim of their sodas or whatever and watch them freak out. It was always funny. They'd done it to me a couple of times, so it was all in good fun. One day, my girlfriend at the time comes over right after me and the boys got done smoking a doob and messing with each other using the hot sauce. My boys leave, so I put the moves on my lady. After about 30 seconds of petting, she stops kissing me and grabs my wrist to pull out my finger. She said with the most concerned look I've ever seen on anyone's face before, "Were you messing with the hot sauce? Did you wash your—" And she didn't finish the sentence. She screamed and ran into my shower. She must have been spraying herself out for over an hour. My dumb idiot self, after her being in the shower for 10 minutes, goes into the bathroom to apologize and pee. And of course, I didn't wash my hands. Instant karma. I had my junk hanging into the sink basin, splashing it off and apologizing over and over, and she's in the shower cursing at me. I guess it wasn't a game ender. We've been married 4 years and have 3 kids, so, you know. Oh, sweet God. It's like that experience I talked about the other day with putting my contact lenses in with chili-coated fingers. Except somehow worse? I mean, that's a trial by fire for a relationship there. And it sounds like you guys passed. Congratulations! Next up, another story of fire down below, and not the good kind. She was wild and up for anything. She apparently liked it in the rear. Fumbled for lubrication and picked up a tube of Icy Hot, but I noticed and laughed. Whew, good thing we didn't just use this, right? She gets a crazy look in her eye and says, "Why not?" Well, let me tell you why not. The burning. Oh, the burning. For me, it was like I'd stuck my member in a nest of fire ants. Fire ants that were still upset about Gore Bush in 2000 and were ready for revenge. But I jumped in the shower and washed that off, and within an hour or so it was just a distant rumor of heat, like a cat napping in a sunbeam. But for her, she was in so much pain, she writhed howling on the bathroom floor for a solid hour and then just became catatonic for the rest of the night. It was probably hotter than the first bite of microwave chicken pot pie. Butt in her butt. Bad idea, do not do. I was seeing a guy, and one day I went on my computer to find myself signed out of everything. So I checked my history just to see if he'd covered his tracks. Oh boy, he had not. What I found wasn't that disturbing, just like PVC and very mild alternate bedroom interest stuff. I thought, oh, I'm cool with that, and kept my mouth shut. So I ordered some pretty out-there shoes normally worn by exotic dancers, a PVC catsuit, soft whips, handcuffs, ropes, and a big old toy, which I was fully intending on using on myself. I set up the living room while he was working, got into my filthiest mood, and waited. He came home around 6 p.m. and his jaw drops and we get down to things. He starts asking me to hurt him little by little, whipping his butt and legs and stuff. Then he wanted me to sit astride him and punch him in the face and throttle him. So I'm sort of thinking, this is a little weird, but in for a penny, in for a pound. And I accidentally bust his nose, so there's now blood going everywhere. And he's like, just keep going. I give him a tissue and he sat up and was saying how into it he was and we should carry on. So I think I'll give him a little show myself with the toy. He's suffered enough, right? Apparently not. He wants that toy in his butt. I'm not comfortable with this, but what the hell. So I grease her up and give it to him, noting to myself that his butthole wasn't that tight. It's at this point I hear a key in the front door, and who the frick has that key? In walk his mother and 3 older sisters. While I try to jump up and find something to cover my PVC-covered self, he's tied up, bent over the couch, blood everywhere. His mum's face is unbelievable, and as she looks around, the toy slowly slides out of his rear and flops onto the ground. In short, punched and stuck a toy into my boyfriend upon request, and his whole frickin' family walks in. Stop wasting money. Which of the premium apps are actually legit? I tell you what I won't ever do is pay for a service that still has ads. I'll pay for no ads, but will never pay for ads. Looking at you, Hulu. Supergreg. Contrary to its name, it's one of those apps that basically can help identify, track, and make a perfect watering schedule for plants. I don't have a green thumb, and I've managed to keep about 20 plants alive and thriving for about a year and a half now because of it. Makes plant growing literally idiot-proof. Road trippers. Plug in your route and you can filter for parks, food, bathrooms, entertainment and stuff along the way. It was a great resource driving cross-country with the littles. That sounds awesome, so I went to check it out on Google Play just to find out that it only has a rating of 2.8. A lot of the recent reviews sound like maybe the app changed a lot and people hate it now. I mean, it's not a subscription, but get the Paprika app if you cook at all. It's not perfect by any means, but you can go to a website and download a recipe and then scale and convert it as needed. I was just talking about this app at a dinner party this past weekend. My husband bought it for me as a Christmas gift almost 20 years ago. It was like $30 back then. He took the time to type in my handwritten recipes and uploaded the ones I had the websites for. I used to print crap out and keep it all in a folder back then. He got me an iPad for Christmas and it came loaded with Paprika and all of my recipes. Best gift ever. Now it's like $4, but I've been using it so long and it's amazing. I love that if other people have the app, you can send them the file of the recipe so they can easily have it as well. I don't know if this counts, but Anki. The desktop version and Android version is free, but the iOS App Store version costs around $20. It's how they keep Anki free for other devices. Anki uses a spaced repetition system, meaning you can create flashcards or use other people's pre-made decks, and Anki puts it through its algorithm and lets you study these flashcards at specific intervals that are optimized for retention, and you go through these flashcards every day. If you've ever wanted to keep something in your head for the long term, usually vocabulary for learning a language, but also medical terms from studying and stuff, yeah, I really recommend it. I had the app on my laptop for around 2 years before buying the app on my phone to use during transit, and I don't regret it at all. Maybe that's what I try out for my next language then, because Memrise and Duolingo did not work for me. This video is not sponsored by Memrise or Duolingo. For any aviation geek, Flight Radar 24. All trails. If it saves you from getting lost when hiking one time, then it's totally worth the cost. And the maps are useful, but the ratings it gives you, they're lies. Everything is an extremely rugged trail. Bring 8 liters of water and an evac helicopter with you at the minimum, is what your average AllTrails reviewer says to anything involving the slightest gentle slope. Maybe it's just the trails I take, but I always feel like the opposite. Every trail is rated like strenuous but moderate at best, only one hard section. Then it turns out it's like a 10-mile hike with a 750-foot gain over like a quarter mile. Oof. I paid a yearly subscription to this app called Finch. It's a self-care app that you can set tasks and goals throughout the day to help remind you to take care of yourself, and the more you take care of yourself and take care of your needs, the more you take care of the little bird that you're nurturing in the app. The more you take care of yourself, the more you send your bird on adventures around the world, and the more items you gain, and the more things you can decorate your birdhouse with, and it's just really a fun way to take care of yourself, to be kind to yourself, and to remember to do tasks that otherwise you would forget to do. You can have friends on there, and you can send them various types of appreciation hugs or things like that. And so as you take care of yourself, your little bird goes on adventures and gets older and grows up and changes and asks you questions, and the way you answer the questions describes your little bird's personality and kind of gives you some insight into your own personality. I think anyone going through a hard time should at least download the Finch app and set up some self-care goals, just like simply getting out of bed or washing your face or brushing your teeth, things like that, because sometimes it's hard to have the executive function to do that, but taking care of this little birdie might give you the motivation to do it, and that's why I do it. Maybe I was doing it wrong, but I felt bad when using Finch. Like every time I wasn't able to achieve the number of goals required to send them on an adventure, I was like, oh. The German weather service doesn't even want your money. Their product is so good that they were sued to give it a price. The state is not allowed to monopolize a niche like that, so wetter.com forced their hand. To distinguish their app from all of the free tosh, they had to make it cost like €2. And if you live in Germany, it's quite frankly more than worth the money. It's the perfect weather app, the customization is wonderful, you can choose when exactly it sends you a push notification for which city, which kind of weather at what minimum strength, for as many places as you want. Its graphs are informative and actually give you 100% of the available information from the weather services, instead of just trying to give you a nice picture of a cloud or whatever. And you have access to all the weather maps your heart could desire. Absolutely worth the money and updated far more reliably than any other weather app. Everyone around asks me for the weather. On X-Hunt. With a subscription, it shows property lines along with your real-time location. Even if you're not a hunter, like my wife and I just like to hike, and being able to see property lines on a map lets us make sure we're staying on public land. I feel like I need to remind people that you can get a library card and borrow Kindle and other versions of books for free without leaving your house. The only downside is you might have to wait a bit for the very popular titles. Damn. I came in here looking for some good suggestions, hoping for some great one-time pay apps. Everybody just suggests subscription services. Pay forever. Hey, welcome to Modern Life. It's awesome, but if you pay $14.99 a month, you can get Modern Life Plus. TriPit. Besides being an app that I depend on, the fare tracker feature has saved me thousands of dollars. Once you buy your plane tickets, the app monitors the cost and lets you know if the price has dropped. You can then call the airline and get a refund for the difference between what you paid and the current price. Sometimes it's hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands. Wait, airlines refund you the difference if the price of your ticket drops? Is this a US thing? Nope, I was told this about TripIt as well and tried it only to discover that no, the airlines don't refund the difference when they drop their fare. However, since airlines legally have the 24-hour cancellation policy, like you get a refund if you cancel within 24 hours of purchase, then if the prices change within 24 hours, you can cancel and repurchase. But you can do that without TripIt as well. Zest. Kinda like Duolingo, but for cooking. I have Babbel. It's like Zest except for languages. Plex. Having your own media server is phenomenal, and curating your content is made much easier. Are there free alternatives? Yep, sure are. I bought Plex Pass 10 years ago for $75 and I did fine. Also on board the YouTube Premium train. Big screen YouTube and not fooling with VPNs and ad blocking with a premium service? That's a bargain. PDF Expert. I used it to annotate and redline work docs, and it easily allows me to access files across a variety of cloud storage, like Dropbox, OneDrive, and Google Drive. Random, but as a pilot, ForeFlight is amazing, and the devs deserve every dollar. Stellarium if you're into astronomy or just the night sky. It's the only app I've ever bought. It's free on the PC though. WinRAR. Easy man, not all of us are millionaires. Yeah, nice try, WinRAR CEO. Strava if you run or cycle. Their segments make me run faster. Dropout, best $5.99 I spend every month. Wholly original streaming comedy content from the talent behind College Humor. They're growing every year and so many of their shows are hilarious. The majority of them are in a game show format with different concepts. One of the greatest strengths of the whole platform is that most of their actors and comedians are friends and have worked together for years, with crossovers from Smosh, Try Guys, and other internet comedy groups. Sam Reich knows and genuinely loves his people, and it shows. Oh, their shows are so damn funny. Breaking news, where newscasters don't know what the teleprompter is going to tell them to say, they have to say it and not laugh. And very important people. They dress up as an actor, but don't let them see the outfit or makeup. Then the actor has a few minutes to see themselves and make up a character on the spot. The Alien episode was so funny. This is the only streaming service we stopped mooching off of someone else and bought our own subscription specifically to support the service. Other services we're starting to cancel and to only buy on a 1-month basis. But Dropout we're intentionally keeping and now sharing with other people to get them hooked. Dropout does seem like the service the narrator may go for if or when he really needs to up the improv, game show, and interview content in his life, and they truly have a prodigious amount. From what I've heard, they compensate their creators well too, which honestly is refreshing in this age. Again, not a sponsor. I can't recommend Flighty enough if you're an iOS user. No travel-related app has made a bigger difference to how I traveled than that. Live activity alerts, often find out about delays or gate changes before the official airline app tells me about it, and it keeps a nice history of all of my travels. I'm a flight attendant and I rely on Flighty more than my airline's own app, which is renowned for having the best app of any of the airlines. Plus you can turn it into a widget on the lock screen, which is so convenient. When I get in my car to go to work, I can just look at my lock screen and see which terminal or gate I'm flying out of that day. So I know which parking lot to park in. The convenience and ease of use is so satisfying. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? RealCalc Plus Scientific Calculator. Hands down the best mobile device calc app I've ever seen. RadarScope if you're really into weather or storm chasing. But if you're into those things, you probably already know or pay for it. I love the M-Ping reports, crowdsourced weather reports. They're awesome for helping me avoid hailstorms. The Narwhale Reddit app. I hated the new Reddit look. I still go out of my way to use old.reddit on a computer. Apollo is too similar to new Reddit for me. Narwhal retains a lot of the simplicity of old Reddit on mobile. RealDebrid. It prefetches torrents so you can stream them directly from RealDebrid's servers without needing to actually torrent anything directly. Along with Streamio as a front end, it's instant streaming of anything. Screw Netflix, screw Amazon, screw Apple, screw Disney. Screw the 100 other channel-specific streaming services. Modern pirating has never been easier. A VPN, Molvad specifically, is the best in my opinion. Nugs.net. If you like jam bands or live music in general, it offers recordings and music streamed live from concerts. Video and audio, it's one of the greatest subscriptions if you like live music. Nova Launcher. I think I bought it for like $4 a while back, and I love that you can customize your icons and stuff. It's a little tricky to figure out, but I love that I can change phones and the overall layout and GUI remain fairly consistent. I switched off Nova after the controversy when they got bought. To be fair, I was switching either way, but this pushed me further away from it. I'm using Niagara Launcher now. It's easily the best launcher I've used. Huckleberry. If you're a new parent, it's a godsend for the first year while you're navigating parenthood with negative hours of sleep. You can log all of the details that your pediatrician will ask about at checkups. We're talking your diapers, milk, and sleep. Also, super helpful when my hubby and I were doing shifts in the first few months to know what the latest and greatest was on our baby. What really makes worth paying for it is the sweet spot calculator that tells you when the baby needs to go down for a nap or bedtime. Yes, you can do the math mentally and watch your baby for their cues, but just trust me. When you're super sleep deprived, it's so worth it because it's one less thing to worry about. For me, PDANet. It's a tethering app with a corresponding Windows client to make it work. It uses your phone's regular data plan instead of the usually limited bullcrap hotspot quotas, and it's the only app I've found that actually prevents your carrier from charging it as a hotspot. Is PDA Net still a thing? I used it many years ago. I assumed it died along with Palm One Trio. Bitwarden is awesome. The password manager that works across all devices, even phones. The free version is probably enough for almost everyone, but a yearly subscription is $10, which is a steal for something I use dozens of times every single day. Textra on Android. Best texting app ever. Simply Piano for learning to play, Simply Draw, you get the point of that one. Also, Have Guitar and Sing. Lessons, listens for feedback, and has some great song variety. I learned to play piano on my own. Hero Forge, a 3D modeling app intended for making D&D miniatures. The Pro version massively expands the possibilities and can greatly improve the quality of your work by giving you lots of new options and mechanics, all at a very reasonable price. MacroFactor. It's the only weight loss app that's ever worked for me. I've tried WW, Fitbit, Noom, intermittent fasting, and a few other crazes, but MacroFactor is the first app with which I've reached a weight loss goal and kept it off. I've lost over 50 pounds and it didn't feel like I was dieting. It's adherence neutral, easy to log foods, and it's accurate. I don't mind paying the premium. It's been literally life-changing. I'm now no longer obese, I'm not even overweight. With the app, I can basically choose how much I want to weigh and it will get me there. It's been outstanding for me. I like the Tabs app. I use it to practice my ukulele. It syncs to Spotify and gives me the tabs to liked songs. It tracks your tempo, which I find helpful. There are hundreds of thousands of songs and lessons for theory and practice. I'm not sure if it's on here or not, but the Ultimate Guitar app is great. $60-ish a year, but it has some excellent features for learning new songs and getting better as a player. Procreate, and you can share the purchase with your family on Apple devices, so you only have to buy it once. The only media company I support is Dropout. We love Sam, True American Reich. It makes me so happy to see 2 people have mentioned Dropout so far as I've scrolled this group of answers. YNAB. Your entire relationship with money will change if you stick to it. I tried YNAB for a while, but it was too much hassle. I didn't like their method of budgeting, as it didn't feel intuitive. Also, at the end of every month, I had to spend hours getting my account to reconcile. It was too rigid and not a good method of budgeting. The final nail was when they switched to a subscription model instead of a pay-once one. That's when I abandoned it. Now, I use the Good Budget app. It works on the cash envelopes principle, where you have different envelopes of cash to spend in different categories. Does everything you need for proper budgeting without extra hassles. The free version has 10 budget categories, so enough for most users. Audible. Audiobooks are amazing, and on Audible there are so many book packs with several books in them. Each month you get a credit, and the book packs only cost 1 credit. A couple of months ago I got a pack of 9 books, somewhere between 50 to 60 hours of the series. If anyone likes zombies and wants a really good and long series to dig into, try Slow Burn Box Set by Bobby Adair. As I said, the first 9 books come in a pack for a single credit. It's about a character who gets caught up in a zombie apocalypse, but finds himself half between being a zombie and half normal. He looks like a zombie, but functions like a human. This adds so many layers of interesting challenges and situations. It's a great series. Psst, if you're thinking of getting Audible, check out your local library first. Many now have an app where you can check out ebooks and audiobooks. It's free, and it doesn't enrich Bezos, I think. Not giving your money to Bezos is always a massive plus in the narrator's opinion. And yes, I recently bought my partner a Kobo, and they were able to find just about all of the audiobooks and ebooks they were interested in at my library. Yay, libraries! The New York Times Games app. YouTube Premium. I'm still mad they raised the price recently, though. WinZip. On day 6,356, I took the plunge and never looked back. Relay is amazing for Reddit. Relay for life. I bought Pro years ago and I'm happy to pay the $1 a month, usually from Google Opinions credit, and I never see Reddit ads. JetBrains Sea Lion. It's a great IDE for C and C++ programming. It's got everything and then some, and they treat their customers well. Expensive, but best in class. Also Doppler, a music player for iOS and Mac. Great UI, simple to use, great integration with apps and iDevices, great in combination with an NAS and buying music. Indie developer, too. iExit. My wife got it on her phone a while ago and it's been a lifesaver on any road trip. $2 for lifetime access. It's a database of everything on a highway exit. Great for looking for gas and food options in one stop. Streamio, the free version, and RealDebrid, the paid version. As a combo, they're great. No need to pay for any other streaming service anymore. It's by far the best value for what you get that I've seen in this group of answers. I've only been using it for a couple of months, but I've already got it set up for my mum across the country as well. The bottom line is $17 for 6 months for something that replaces every other streaming service. It's a crazy good deal. The only thing I think you can't get on there is live sports or pay-per-view stuff, of course. The short version is that Streamio is a free app that connects you to RealDebrid, which allows you to stream torrents without the same risk as is associated with downloading torrents. Heavy, spelt H-E-V-Y, to track your workouts. Mealime, the recipe and ingredient app that changed my life. Only $4 a month. I didn't think I had something to contribute, but I've used a billion recipe apps, and this is the one I love the most. Mealime adds recipes constantly of all varieties. You can add your own recipes from online and save them there. When you meal plan, you can select your meals for the week and it makes a simple grocery list for you. And you can of course add whatever else you need for the house as well. $4 a month is very worth it in my opinion, unless someone's found a cheaper or generally better option. My biggest gripe with these kinds of apps is I'm picky and I like quick meals, and they just don't have what I'm looking for most of the time. But I find plenty of dishes I'm interested in on Mealime. Proton Mail. I second this. I've got the VPN version. I got in early, so I got free cloud updates each year and I'm currently at 5 terabytes of cloud storage and I haven't paid for anything but mail and VPN services since then. It's gotta be Spotify and Amazon Prime. I don't even notice the money coming out from them and they're both very handy to have. Well, Amazon is anyway. Spotify is just convenient to not have adverts constantly. I dropped Amazon recently. I wasn't getting anywhere near 2-day shipping, sometimes even by their own metric of the timer starts once it leaves the warehouse. A week after you ordered it, and putting ads on the Prime Video was the final straw for me. It's a shame because I think I was one of the 3 people that actually liked Amazon Music. For the past couple of years of my Prime subscription, my packages would never be delivered within the promised 2-day delivery period. When they added advertising to the Prime movies and TV shows, that was the last straw for me. I haven't had it or missed it for over a year now. This disturbing missing person story gets darker every time you look closer. The 2 Dutch women who got lost in the jungle in Panama. Went for a day hike, didn't turn back, and apparently got lost deep in the forest during the rainy season. Creepiest thing is that their phones were discovered in a backpack downriver, fully intact, along with a camera that had photos. Normal, happy photos of them on the trail taken just an hour before their internal phone records showed that they started trying to call 911, or the local equivalent, for help, and 90 other photos taken in the rainy darkness in the middle of the night between 1 and 4 a.m. a week after they disappeared, methodically showing a cliff and some bushes and some impromptu markers made of what little things they'd brought with them. Fragments of their bodies, we're talking bones and a boot with a footstool in it, were found a couple of months later. But nobody really knows for sure how they died. Accident on the trail? Fell into the rapids? Murdered and then someone was playing with their phones? I don't know. This story creeped me out big time. A guy in my mum's town has been missing since November. He's younger and has epilepsy, and his family have been very shifty in their statements about it. It's just creepy to me because this is someone I know who's either dead or hidden. There's just no way the kid's been out in the wilderness living this entire time. This isn't Hatchet. To clarify, I don't support witch hunting the guy's mum. Everyone in my city has been doing it since November, and in the scenario that she's innocent, she's probably going to be haunted by this. Her own son is gone and she's the prime suspect. And considering she's obviously the prime suspect, don't you think the police would have found something out had she done it? I know everyone would just like to believe they're Sherlock Holmes, but please don't start vigilante investigations. They generally don't help. Just put all of your efforts into finding him and not attacking his mother, people in that town. Someone my mother knew went missing a few years ago. While they were looking for her, news crews interviewed a friend of hers who was distraught. During the interview, he said he hoped she could be found, and they informed him that they just found a piece of her body. At this, he went pale and had to walk away and sit down on the sidewalk. Sometime later, it was discovered that he was the one who did it. He pled guilty after a long legal battle and is serving a life sentence. My mother knew the victim and her family well and was deeply affected by this. I was in my early teens and wasn't sure how to process it. I didn't know her personally, but it shocked me that something like that could happen to someone even tangentially related to my life. I guess we'll have a mix of unresolved cases and ones that were missing for a long time before their eventual resolution. Both sorts are equally fascinating and horrifying, in my opinion. Oof, this woman who was working alone and got dragged out of a gas station, all seen on camera. The footage was so bad they couldn't even figure out who it was, so they put out a message in the paper with his coat description. Someone eventually says their janitor always wears that coat. They go to the guy's house and search non-stop over and over again. They find a single burned tooth in the backyard. It would have been inconclusive, but the girl had gone to a dental conference and got a just-on-the-market filling that only like 2 people in the world had. So they caught him. Just to add to the story, a bystander caught a partial license plate as the guy drove past a park, but his car was registered under the wrong color, so they couldn't find the car. Yes, this was a Forensic Files episode, and the technology back in those days wasn't what it is today. The Brandon Lawson case. There are several recordings and voicemails from him in what sounds like a very long and drawn-out chase. Around 2 a.m., he was in a field in Texas and called 911. In the call, it's hard to hear what he says, but he sounds distressed and panicked. He cuts off, and that was the last he was heard from. His brother said he called after him, but he has yet to be found. It sounds like he ran into something, and he mentions he's being chased in the woods. An outside party edited the audio to take out some of the noise interference, and it sounds like shots in the background of the call. Allegedly, at 1 minute 03 of the audio, you can barely hear a faint "help me." I was informed by some Redditors that he had a felony warrant out for his arrest, so he was more scared of whatever he had encountered than he was of going to jail, because he specifically requested the cops regardless. I'm actually from the area where Lawson lived. People don't talk about the case much anymore, but I think a lot of outsiders fail to realize that the area around Bronte or Concho Valley is generally a no-man's land. Spotty cell phone service, long winding roads leading to nowhere or to the next small town, huge acreage with nothing on it except thickets of mesquite trees and cacti. He could have been bit by a rattlesnake or shot by an angry rancher, or he was picked up off the road and abducted. I find it odd he still hasn't been found. On December 25, 2024, Brandon's wife, Ladessa, posted on the Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook page that the DNA results had finally returned a positive result for Brandon Lawson, confirming his death. The exact cause of his death remains unclear to us. My sister, but hold on, the ending is positive. She went missing during high school. She started hanging out with the wrong crowd, got into substances, and then just disappeared one day. 2 days went by, not a word. Then one day, my mum spotted the truck of the guy she was seeing when she went missing. It was parked at a hotel. We have a few police in our family, so they went to check it out. Sure enough, it was her with this one scummy guy. The guy was wanted and went to jail. Sister went to rehab. She's now a college grad, clean for over 10 to 15 years, has 2 beautiful kids and a genuinely great husband. She's a living success story. This is a ray of light after reading all of these dark, scary stories. The Missing Germans. It's a long read, but it is fascinating. Basically, some German tourists decided to go on an adventure in Death Valley in a rented minivan with no real idea of how stupid that is. Last seen on 23rd of July 1996. Despite an intense search and rescue operation, no trace of the family was discovered, and the search was called off. In 2009, the remains of the 2 adult members of the family were discovered by experienced hikers, Les Walker and Tom Mahood, who were carefully searching a remote area for evidence of the fate of the tourists, and conclusive proof of the fate of the male adult was later established. The disappearance of Susan Powell. This one's heart-wrenching. I was so absorbed in it when it was still going on, but it's been a while since I looked into it. Apparently Susan went missing, and her husband said he took his kids late-night camping, leaving in the middle of the night and returning the next day. In the middle of winter, and his wife was gone when he returned. So much just points to him murdering her. Her phone and belongings were still at home. Her family didn't hear from her. She had made it clear that if something happened to her, her husband was responsible. He had been bullying and possessive. Oh, and a large wet spot on the carpet with a fan blowing on it when the police arrived. Oh, and the kids saying they knew they'd never see their mum again, and that she wasn't around when they were awoken in the middle of the night and put into the front seat of the van to go camping. By some fluke of the justice system, the husband was never charged and took the rest of the family on to a very, very sad ending that we can't actually put into the video. As far as I remember, no closure on Susan being found, no body, no justice, and no answers. It baffles me. A local one for me, but the case of Dakota James. In short, he was a Pittsburgh college student who went missing. People say he fell in his car. City residents disagree. A bunch of guys went missing around that time, and they all had the same gay dating app on their phone. Two of them, Brandon Swanson, on the phone with his dad when he exclaims, "Oh crap," and he's never heard from or seen again. And two, Sarah and Jacob Hoggle. Their mother took them somewhere safe and has never told anyone where that was or what happened. She also apparently has paranoid schizophrenia and is not competent to stand trial. My daughter stopped in the same spot every day while walking home from school. Then my wife or I would pick her up. I argued and eventually convinced them that this was not okay. She needed to either stay at school or walk home. About a couple of days later, a car was stopped across the street. Two guys, older teens, were hanging out with the doors open, listening to music. When my daughter was across the street, one of the guys started sprinting towards her. She ran. The guy stopped chasing after about a block. She told me about this, and I thought it was nothing, just teenagers screwing with a little kid. Then she told me that when the one guy started chasing her, the other turned the music up real loud, blasting it. That made my blood run cold. It was no longer a couple of guys screwing around, it was someone who noticed her pattern and had a plan. Sorry for the obligatory, this story isn't exactly what was asked for, but it does just haunt me. To add, our neighborhood is a little removed. No outside traffic comes through, and it isn't likely that the people who tried to abduct her were from around here, which raises an unanswerable question or two. Oof. Well, I for one am glad you added it, if for nothing else than giving us a near miss to be relieved about, rather than another tragic story of how potentially awful we can be to other members of our species, or another family with unresolved heartbreak and trauma. My brother-in-law's uncle was driving to work, and they found his truck with all of his belongings, except his clothes, still running on the side of the road. No sign of him, just gone. Pretty famous, but Henry McCabe. The most bizarre thing about his disappearance is the voicemail that was left, though. It had all sorts of noises where people speculate it could have been the sound of waterboarding or getting tased. His family also apparently misled the police a few times, and his friends, who were the last seen with him, made a series of poor decisions which led to the disappearance. It was also odd that the FBI got involved with all this. As I said earlier, the creepiest thing I find is the voicemail of strange sounds that he left that nobody could identify. Apparently there were a few recordings of it posted on the internet, yet nobody can find the full audio anymore, and only bits and pieces. Not creepy in a supernatural sense or anything, but definitely baffling. But Somebody Knows Something podcast has 2 seasons that discussed 2 missing person cases in Ontario. The first season is about someone who basically disappeared while fishing with his father and siblings in the 70s. The second season is about a 29-year-old woman who went missing in January of 1998. Both are still unsolved, and the guy doing the podcast explores a bunch of the different theories and interviews people with connections to the case. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The disappearance of UMass Amherst student Maura Murray. There are so many weird, disturbing details to her disappearance, but none give any true leads to her whereabouts. Perhaps the creepiest element of the case is the suspicious actions of her father, although these are due some speculation from one blogger in particular, so the credibility is questionable. Also, Maura was last seen after getting into a car accident in New Hampshire, but when the last witness came back after calling for help, she had left the crash scene without any tracks in the snow. I've been digging into Missing 411, and there are some very unsettling and seemingly unexplainable missing persons cases in America's national parks. There's a very famous Japanese case where a mother said she was going to meet an old classmate, left the house, leaving an 18-month-old baby behind, and just never came back. What's really creepy about it was when the husband was being interviewed on TV, there was a memo on the wall that said, "Don't believe anything Yoko says." Yoko was the name of the missing lady's sister. I read this a long time ago, so the specifics are hazy, but from what I read, it was legit. It took place in the 18th or 19th century, but a group was traveling through the forest. One guy was around 30 yards ahead, joking around, and started running even more ahead of the group. As the stragglers turned the bend, they saw him trip over a log, and he was gone. All witnesses said they saw him trip and fall, but it was as if he fell into a portal. There was no hole, the path was clear and well-traveled minus the fallen tree or log, and the ground was sturdy. The stragglers were no more than 10 meters away, and it was a clear day. The guy was never seen again. Not sure about the veracity of it, but it always stuck with me. For what it's worth, the guy didn't have any debts, the people he was with were friends, and no foul play was suspected. He just tripped and fell into an abyss and was never seen again. The Schultz family from Drage in Lower Saxony. Husband Marco, who was 41 at the time, and his wife Sylvia, 43, and their daughter Miriam went missing from their home in Drage on the 22nd of July 2015, nowhere to be found. Marco's body was found a week later in the Elbe River, and he had a concrete block attached to his legs with a rope. Sylvia and Miriam, though, remain unfound to this day. Their house was just emptied of all their personal belongings and everything. It will be sold, the money will be put in a secure account until they find out who will inherit it. Sylvia can't be pronounced dead yet, earliest in 8 years from now, 10 years after her disappearance. Miriam, on the other hand, can't be pronounced dead until she would be 25. That's the law here in Germany. Many people believe that either they're all gone, maybe the dad did it before jumping in the river. Others believe that mother and daughter are alive. Who knows though? We may never know. Here is what I have learned from these stories. Do not go to jungle. Do not hang out in fields at 2 a.m. Do not go outside at night. Do not go outside at day. Do not drive. Do not stay in house. And do not be outside of house. What about that poor lady who claimed that a dingo took her baby while she was camping 32 years ago? The coroner has finally ruled that a dingo did in fact take the baby. Also, in Portland, Oregon, Kyron Horman was dropped off at his school by his stepmother, never to be seen again. Big story in the Portland area, and lots of searches and accusations towards the stepmother, but no charges yet. I've never understood why anyone would find it even remotely possible that an apex predator would take an infant. Of course it did. Not necessarily creepy, but the disappearance of Sky Metalwala in Bellevue, Washington. The mother clearly did it, her version of events just doesn't add up, but she's never been arrested. The crazy thing is, a rerun of Law & Order aired on a local TV the night before the disappearance, and the circumstances of the case on the episode are eerily similar to the real-life case. A local girl my age went missing after hanging out with her friends, and a friend is suspected. They never found any body, but they did find her DNA inside the trunk of his car. It's the creepiest case I know for the very narcissistic reason that she and I are of similar demographics, and she knew her attacker. She knew him well enough to feel safe walking alone with him at night, and that's scary. There's a book from 1983 called Stranger Than Science by Frank Edwards. I read it a long time ago, but one story still creeps me out. I might not remember the whole story correctly, but it was about a man who disappeared while walking across his front lawn. Some family members could hear him calling faintly for help weeks after he disappeared. He was never found. Pedro Lopez is a serial killer who, at least according to himself, has killed more than 100 people. He spent some time in prison and at some point was freed, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Well, reading these answers at night before bed was a terrible mistake. Yeah, reading about a prolific unaliver still at large with a habit of ending and mutilating regular folks like me is a spin on things that makes it a little more personal, isn't it? Sleep tight, listeners. There's a couple of students that went missing in a town not far from where I live. They were taking a walk across this railroad bridge. They were taking Snapchat videos as they were walking. As they neared the middle of the bridge, they turned and noticed a man following them onto said bridge. They got him on video. You could tell the guy had malicious intent. They went missing shortly after they took the video. Sad stuff, they still haven't been found. Update. Okay, it's been brought to my attention that their bodies were found shortly after they went missing. Evidently, the perpetrator is still on the loose. This was in Delphi, Indiana. The disappearance of Asha Degree. This case wouldn't qualify for a Twilight episode or anything, but it was crazy in that she had a good family, she was a good student, everything should have been fine and without risk, and this girl still vanished. February 14th, 2000. It's not only Valentine's Day, but her parents' wedding anniversary, and Asha is missing. Adults in her life sheltered her, maybe to a fault. There was no computer or internet in the home. No cell phone. Asha's friends were from the church or school. Nobody she interacted with was an unknown. A stranger would have had no access to her. She was either at church with family, school, at a relative's home, or her own home with her parents and brother. I say this to illustrate that even in the early days of chat rooms and messaging, Asha wouldn't have been using these things to meet someone online. Anyone unfamiliar in her life should have been quickly spotted. But what we know is that the night of February 13th through 14th, Asha crept out of bed, dressed, brought a packed backpack with her as she went into the night. But for what? Apparently she was really afraid of storms and dogs, yet that night was pouring, cold rain, and she was alone with nobody to cling to as she usually would when walking past yards with dogs. She was a good kid who didn't break rules. At 2:30 a.m., her father was awake and checking on his kids. They were both in bed, safe. 3:15 a.m., drivers on Highway 18 think they see a girl walking in the rain over a mile from the degree home. When one driver circles around to check if they need help, the kid runs off the road into the woods. If this was Asher, it's the last time she's been seen. Has she managed to walk over a mile in such a short time in driving rain at night, all by herself? Or was there a car waiting for her outside her house, and did she willingly climb in? Was she let out, or did she escape? Candy wrappers, markers, and a hair tie are discovered in a shed back in the woods that the drivers saw the kid run into. They belonged to Asher. A year later, during construction, her backpack is discovered in the ground wrapped in several plastic bags. There have been no more clues as to what happened to her. A popular theory is that somehow she was lured out. Someone told her maybe it's a surprise party for her parents' anniversary. We know that she packed family photos and a change of clothes, one outfit being somewhat dressy. Again, Asher's a good kid who doesn't tell lies. She had to be convinced this was a good secret to keep, I guess. One that her parents would be happy she kept and that she wouldn't be scolded for sneaking out and breaking the rules for. A person would have to know her family and not stick out as strange when talking to her. But why was she walking along the road? Did she escape the person only to be recaptured? Another theory centers around the book that she read in school, The Whipping Boy. In the book, the characters run away and have an adventure. But remember, Asher is scared of the dark, storms, and dogs. Why would she have a fun adventure on such a night? Why would she break so many rules along the way? It's just out of character for her. This case, it just shouldn't have happened. The facts are simply bizarre, and what we know just doesn't seem to fit. The police ruled out her parents, but could they know more? With no access to the internet, who could have manipulated a shy, obedient kid to fight against all of her deep fears and just vanish? Christopher Kurz. In 1989, Christopher vanished. The day he disappeared, his family received a mailed-letter from Duluth, Maine, telling his parents that he couldn't explain why he was doing what he was doing. His van was later found hours away with a note detailing whose it was. He was never found. Based on the story, I think he self-deleted or he just walked away. He had been struggling a bit prior to the events and only took out $200 before disappearing. His van was left at a rest stop outside a heavily wooded area, but multiple searchers found nothing. They believe he may have hitchhiked to another area. It's possible he was murdered, or got caught up in the homeless lifestyle and is still alive but a vagabond living on the streets. Weird story though, with how easy he vanished. 3 lighthouse keepers went missing from a tiny island off Scotland. Nobody knows what happened, but when people came to the island, they saw that 2 of the 3 raincoats were missing. A meal was half-eaten and a chair was knocked over on the ground. When they checked the diary of one of the lighthouse keepers, it talked about a violent storm and how the other 2 lighthouse keepers were acting weird. What's creepy though is that there was never a storm in that region, even though the diary said there was. All 3 lighthouse keepers were never found. Okay, I believe someone did some experimenting and theorizing and figured out that 2 of them indeed must have gone out to secure something during a storm. It's not actually confirmed that there wasn't one at the time, and some of the sites posting about the incident often twist words. If there was a massive storm, there would have been massive waves, which explains 2 of the coats gone, and then the 3rd guy ran out to warn them of the waves without his coat, and they all got knocked over and sucked into the water. What cops find during home searches is way darker than you think. Nightmare fuel. I spent my first year as a constable in an inner-city suburb of Queensland. Now, of the population of this area, something like 40% was reserved for government-commissioned housing for rehabilitated criminals and persons released from mental health assessment centers. So there was a share of creepy stuff, but to be fair, for the most part, the people we dealt with were more like cartoon characters than really shady creeps, but they had their moments. One guy that we'd run into before just decided one afternoon to start destroying stuff in the commission set of units he lived at. He was frickin' going off. Kicking through latticing, throwing pot plants off buildings at passers-by, stealing and collecting people's shoes, smashing car windows. After about 15 minutes of this mayhem, he must have run out of steam and just gone back to his unit. That's where we found him, and he decided to bung on a turn. He just would not stop screaming and bashing his head and face into any surface or object he could find. Eventually, we got a van with a pod and we secured him, then went back to the house to figure out what the frick had happened. And let me tell you, the house was an absolute cluster F. Somehow, he had fit 2 Coles trolleys inside and was using them as furniture. The whole place smelled of rotting food and crap. On the coffee table, if you could call it that, there were a series of scrawled notes of just expletives. Again, not massive mental function with this guy. And there was a wooden box too. Inside the wooden box was about 100 small clip seal bags. Over half the bags had a brown granular organic material in them, the others had clear crystal-like stuff in them. The brown bags were somewhat organized from smallest to largest samples. Now, with the kind of people we had in the area, we had all sorts of wonderful ways these people got dosed up. We were used to seeing weird stuff that people would ingest. So we don't recognize these bags, but we've got a pretty good idea it's a narcotic of some kind. So of course we examine these bags and the contents. There's enough there to test if need be, so I get one of them and empty the contents to see it better. So these samples of brown material, they've got flecks of color and little tendril-like hairs. Not unusual for a plant derivative to have. But I've never seen it before, so I'm looking at it as I hold, talking to my partner, that it might be really coarse hash derivative or a byproduct of production of something else. Cart, maybe. Might explain why this guy went nuts. A dog unit officer who assisted with the arrest comes in. He sees the scene, looks at the coffee table, looks at the bags, looks at me holding the contents of one in the palm of my hand, and straight away says, "That guy's got golden staph. He's been collecting scabs." This guy had been picking at a golden infection on his leg, collecting the scabs, organizing them into smallest to largest, and then eating them. The small yellow crystals, they were snot and crust from his nose. Same end goal. In short, I responded to a disturbance call and fondled the real-life gold member personal stash by mistake. That was messed up. I bought shares in Pure Cell hand sanitizer after that. Oh, strong start. Semi-gag already in the first story. 2 out of 10 would not read that again. If you're listening here, thank you for the views, but my god, you are sick people. Cheers! On to the next one. My very first dead guy had been in his house for almost a week during a very hot July with no air conditioning. Did you know that your skin becomes clear and you can see everything? He popped when the funeral home came to get him. Yes, popped. Some people, they're not bothered by this. Me? No. I don't have the stomach. This is the only part of the job that bothers me. I'm not a cop, but a paramedic. Went into a lady's house one time, can't remember what the call was for. She had sheets of paper taped all over the walls. They said something along the lines of, "Remember, the voices aren't real." It gave me a real warm, safe feeling, I don't mind telling you folks. That makes me sad. I work in a mental hospital. There's a lot of schizoaffective type diagnoses. It just breaks my heart how some people have to live their lives like that. This one wasn't mine, but from an EMT friend. It's also maybe not so much creepy as nasty, but it makes my hair stand on end whenever I think on it. In one of the apartments in a nearby city, the apartment manager went in to investigate a really bad smell in one of the lower units. Apparently, people all around it were complaining. Once he saw what was up, he called the ambulance. So, first responders show up, which includes said EMT friend, and there's this lady sitting on the couch. There's also something squirmy going on down below in her underpants area. So yeah, they check her out, and in the process remove said undergarments. Out falls a swarm of maggots. Yes, her lady bits were covered in them. Apparently, said individual had a fairly strong substance use problem. Some of the syringes she poked into her nethers had caused an infection. This led to rotting flesh, which attracted flies, which in turn led to maggots. The worst part is that she wasn't dead, just so dosed up that she basically never noticed that she was literally rotting and falling apart from the waist down. Sort of off topic, but one thing I can never figure out is how people like this are able to afford an IV substance habit. Since the woman sounds like a very lazy shut-in, I'm assuming it was smack. That crap is cheap when you first start using, but man, it gets expensive. It's real easy to drop $1,000 to $2,000 a week on the stuff. I'm clean now, but at one point I was a high-functioning smack addict. I still lived a normal working life, minus injecting stuff and dating a girl who was the biggest smack dealer in town, of course. She made bank dealing, but had a huge habit herself. She'd make $4,000 to $5,000 a week and then spend literally all of it on stuff just for herself. I miss that girl. I wish we both weren't addicts at the time. We had a very fun relationship, however, when you're using with your girlfriend, it starts out extremely fun, but the good times can't last forever and eventually rips the two of you apart. I skipped town and got clean. She got back together with an ex when he was released from jail and haven't heard from her in a very long time. My dad answered a domestic call from an apartment on the 23rd floor. As soon as he walked in, he saw blood everywhere. In pools on the floor, spatter on the walls and ceiling, smeared all over everything. He walked further in to find a woman crumpled on the floor beyond recognition, and the partner was standing in front of an open window. My dad started to talk to the man, to coax him into coming with, and the man immediately turned around and stepped out the window, falling 70 meters to his death. This one's from a military police friend of mine, so take it with a grain of salt. This guy was duty officer one night, and as such, he had to respond to serious events. One night there was a fire alarm, and he and a bunch of MPs rolled on it. This was a real fire. False alarms are pretty common. The source turned out to be an officer's apartment, and the officer. When the investigation was conducted, it was found that the officer had filled a bathtub with fuel and field manuals and decided to go out by sitting in the tub and igniting the fuel. After a few seconds, he decided that this was a bad idea and ran from the tub to his apartment door before the end finally took him. So the responding MPs found his charred remains and the bits of burning flesh that were falling off him as he ran for the door. Oh god, that seems like a terrible way to go. Surely that guy had access to a weapon. Why would you want to burn to death? My friend's a cop. There was a wellness check called in. He went, and the place smelled horrible. Discovered a large dead guy, shirtless, sitting in his front room in a lawn chair watching TV. He'd set up an industrial space heater behind his chair, which was on at full blast. Due to the heat and apparently other factors, he had merged through the back of that lawn chair. My husband's a surveyor for the local council and found an eerily similar thing. An old guy in a high-rise flat fell asleep on his recliner with the fireplace blazing and died in his sleep. Cue dripping remains in puddles around the footrest. Ugh. A teacher in my little town of 35,000 souls was caught doing some pretty awful crimes. In his house, the police found a fully kitted, soundproofed abduction room, luckily still unused. The room was windowless, soundproofed, with fresh air ducts and a reinforced lockable door, and was stocked with activities, a TV, a bed and a porta-potty, and video surveillance equipment. Thank God they got him. At my grandparents' on vacation in Iowa. They live in the middle of nowhere, couple of elderly neighbors and cornfields for miles. It was 2 a.m. and I was going to go have a smoke before bed. Their back porch has a big sliding door. Well, I walk into the room with the sliding door, and there's a guy in a creepy rubber mask there. Like the Michael Myers one, but it was a different celebrity I couldn't place. And his eyes are jet black. He's quietly wiggling the door, trying to open it. The lock is weird and lets the door have like an inch of free play. I got so scared I felt my butthole clench up and I dropped my cigarette. Right then, the guy freezes and looks right at me. He pauses, then starts frantically shaking the door trying to open it, like this guy's trying to rip the door off the frickin' house. I run over to my grandpa's weapon cabinet and grab something, I don't know what it was, some old piece, and by the time I whipped around to point it at him, he was gone. I ran and woke up my grandparents. We all walked around the house with loaded weapons for a minute, but the guy was just kaput. A couple of weeks later, some bald guy walked out of the cornfield wearing a dress. He stood by the highway for half an hour, then got picked up by some sketchy car. I won't even go in cornfields in broad daylight anymore. Same guy? Same guy, I reckon. Well, I'd say at least he didn't seem dangerous, but honestly, the rubber mask in the middle of the night is probably the most horrifying thing you can run into. At least go for the black balaclava for a more bland, generally threatening vibe. My brother's a cop. He told me about this time when they responded to a workplace accident where a rail yard worker had been crushed between two rail cars. The guy had kind of been pressed through the ladder of one of the cars. They kept hearing voices coming from the body. Muffled voices, but definitely coming from it. It took them a while to figure out that the guy had been carrying a radio. Needless to say, they were a bit disturbed until they reached that conclusion. Yeah, we found a victim in our yard, put his head on the rail and held on with his hands. Passing freight train had neatly sliced off the top of his skull and all fingers and thumbs. He lived for a few hours afterwards in the hospital. A matter of 5 frickin' inches is the difference between ending it now and a few hours from now in horrible agony. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The guy had 3 years worth of videos he took of men of all ages using the public library bathroom. He said it was common for guys to go in there and just sort of crank it. I had no idea. He said most people had no idea they were being recorded, and others knew but just didn't care. He also had 2 external hard drives full of every kind of twisted and illegal bedroom-related filth video imaginable. Oof. A coat rack with a hat on. Clearing a dark house and seeing what could easily be a person standing motionless in the corner is not fun. As silly as it sounds, I was clearing a house, with my weapon out obviously, and rounded a corner to see a man pointing a piece right at my face. I yelled and was taking slack out of the trigger when I realized I was looking at a full-length mirror. Took a while to recover from that adrenaline dump. That's a good illustration of how the human mind can't process an entire scene at one time, and you'll focus on what's important, the barrel of the weapon, versus other details like my own face and police uniform. My house was broken into during the day while nobody was home, but luckily one of our neighbors saw the guy break in and called the cops. They showed up and checked out our house and notified us. When we first got back, we talked to the cops about the break-in and whatnot. The cop who showed up first to check the house told us when he was going into our basement, he almost had a heart attack because he thought the thief was still there, mistaking a life-sized cardboard cutout of a TV character in the corner for a real person. Abandoned houses are pretty depressing. Family pictures and albums collecting dust and decaying, sad stuff written in marker as daily reminders to start again or get off pills, look for work, make things right. All written in Spanish and seeing a sleeping mat consisting of towels and old sweaters in a corner and pizza boxes from Little Caesars next to it. Lots of stuff you see tells a story that you never asked for or expected to find. It makes me feel lucky to have what I have. Tiny, quiet little southern town. Whole family had been dead for a week. The boyfriend of one of the occupants, who she met online, was visiting from across the country. Stepdad, mother, her, and her friend, all murdered and hacked up by an ex. The mum was a professor at my university a block away, and when she didn't show up for work for a few days, the cops went to the house and talked to the perp, who gave some plausible excuse, so they left. He stayed in the house for a full week before leaving. The cops went back when the neighbors reported the smell. They caught the guy at the airport about to fly home. The fact that he stayed with the corpses for so long is what is really creepy about the whole thing. My brother-in-law's a cop. He told me about a time he and his partner were called in to do a wellness check on somebody with a terminal illness. The family didn't know where the guy was. So they get to the house, knock, and get no response. They entered the house to see if he'd passed away due to his illness, and they didn't find him there. But what they did find was a stairway leading down to a basement. In that basement was a vast number of adult toys, ropes, harnesses, you name it. There was also a stage with a bed on it and a video camera on a tripod focused on said bed. It stumbled upon this guy's dungeon. The guy ended up being alive but was visiting someone out of town and didn't notify any of his family. The creepiest? A dead guy. But not just your average dead guy. The guy had died on his couch, surrounded by no less than 1,500 Miller Lite cans. Plus he had no friends or family. None. He was retired and his electric bill was auto-deducted from his checking account. He died on his couch and nobody had realized it for 5 months. When we found him, the top, or front really, because he was lying on his back, was completely skeletonized. But the bottom, or his back against the couch, was still meaty and rotting. The half-skeleton was kinda creepy, but it's really creepy and sad that this guy left this world and it didn't affect anyone. Just gone and forgotten. And as for the funniest, I responded to a burglary. Going through the house with the homeowners, a young married couple, documenting damage and loss. We step into the bedroom and there's a red, vibrating adult toy on the floor. They look at it, I look at it, and then we look at each other. Spend the next 5 minutes with locked eye contact talking about the broken window, missing jewelry, missing TV, everything. Everyone in the room refused to look at, discuss, or acknowledge the toy. And then we went on to the living room. Oh, and there was also the fat dead lady with the pug that had started eating her from the rear hole. Oh. Friend of a cop here. He told me about how he and his buddy went in to search an apartment. They looked around and his buddy finally called him over. A guy was just, in an oven. Dead of course, but in an oven. When the guys tried to pull him out of said oven, all of the contents and gas of the dead guy fell right out. A few of the guys were rather ill on the spot. Not a cop, but a former corrections officer. During a cell search one time, we stumbled across a 500ml Coffee Mate container, almost full of accumulated specimen from this one guy. I was later told it took 7 months to save it up. I've seen and dealt with a lot of awful stuff, but for some reason, that one ranks up there for me. Bathtub full of dead rats in a share house of illegal workers. They'd leave traps and poison out, and when they caught the rat, they'd just add it to the pile. The whole house was disgusting. Well, in case any of you were wondering, we've now reached the point of the video where the narrator doesn't want to live on this planet anymore. So many potential launching points in this one video for that statement, but a bathtub full of dead rats finally got me there. Congratulations, inspiring achievement. My aunt is a police dispatcher. Normally she takes calls from the public and has an officer nearby respond. But one day she was asked to work the station's radio because the normal guy was sick. That meant she was acting as the central hub of the police radio network, taking calls from officers in the field and issuing backup to them, that kind of thing. She wound up having to listen to 4 cops talking back and forth in a panic as 2 squad cars arrived to check on a reported murder. The guy who was called was certain that there were multiple killers present. The victim's meat had been cut into 1-inch cubes as if their killer was going to fry them up or make kebabs. The whole corpse had been disassembled like that. Bones cut into neat inch segments, organs removed, separated, and organized. She remembers one of the officers panicked and screamed something along the lines of, "This is OCD movie monster bullcrap." I can't remember the exact quote sadly, and I doubt my aunt remembers it herself. She thought they were playing a joke on her until they called for a hazmat crew to get the body. We went into an apartment which was a local substance den. A woman we knew called and said the male renter had been attacked and she had run. We got there and the door was bolted shut. I kicked the door over and over again and it wouldn't open. What I found out later is that another team had done a search warrant on the apartment a couple of weeks earlier, and afterward the tenants had reinforced the door jamb with a metal plate. It took me a total of 22 times kicking the door before I broke the deadbolt in half, which flew across the room and hit the wall. We made entry, weapons drawn, and started clearing the apartment. The place was the kind of spooky I've only seen in places where a lot of crystal is being done. It was dark, there were Third Reich symbols, 666s, upside-down pentagrams and stuff painted on the wall, pictures of faces hung on the wall with the eyes X'd out, and dolls with their eyes scratched out into X's. As we cleared the first room, we started seeing the red. First on the bed, then a trail on the floor leading into the back room. The layout was weird. One main room, and then a back room, which was more of a hallway, and a bathroom at the end of that hall. We followed the trail of blood down the hall to the bathroom door. In the front of the door was the renter's dog, which was shaking uncontrollably and peeing all over the place, scared out of its mind. As we got closer, the pooch got really aggressive because it was scared. I made my way around the doggo and entered the bathroom where I found the renter hunched over in the shower, bleeding from his face, holding his cheeks with his hands. He was frantically trying to talk, pleading with us not to hurt his dog. Red was dripping from his mouth and I couldn't understand him. Then I saw the extent of what had happened to him. His jaw had been dislocated on both sides and it was just hanging there. As he was trying to plead with us, he could only attempt to talk by flicking his tongue in the pattern of the words because his jaw didn't work at all. Oof. My mother used to work for a police department and I'd hang out there when I'd be home sick from school. This old man used to walk to the gas station on the corner to get a pack of smokes and coffee every day. The gas station attendant called for a wellness check when she realized she hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks in the dead of summer. The cops went, knocked, smelled something, opened the door, walked in, and instantly came back, emptying their guts out from the sheer smell. They had to come back later with respirators, trash bags, and snow shovels to clean up the sludge that used to be the old guy. Another officer almost quit his first night on the job. Really bad accident, guy shows up, the one car has nobody in it at all. He's looking around, the guy isn't on the ground anywhere. He tried to figure out if maybe the guy has walked away, so he goes to look inside for some identification. Finds the guy, he hit so hard that he slammed up under and into the dashboard, and was just a broken sack of bones stuffed in around the steering column and other parts. The dumbest school rule ever. Teachers really expected us to follow this? In grade 8, we were banned from standing in circles at recess because of potential scandalous activity going on in the middle. We stood in squares instead. Be there and be square. For a while in my school, groups of kids would stand in circles shouting, "Fight, fight, fight," until a teacher came to break up the non-existent fight. God, we were jerks. We couldn't wear winter clothing like jackets, hats, or gloves in class because apparently they were gang symbols. This was a small farm town in Wisconsin. Besides obviously having no gangs, it was frickin' cold, even indoors in the winter. But clearly, wearing warm clothing is something that only gangs do. Also from a small town in Wisconsin. We weren't able to wear jackets or anything like that in class either for literally the same reason. One kid came into the class wearing snow boots and the teacher told him to put them back in his locker. So he came back with his farm boots that smelled like straight-up manure. We all knew where he was for the rest of the day. I'm a cheerleader, and for School Spirit Week, I wore the uniform they gave me. I got dress-coded. That is the ultimate high school moment. They banned wristwatches, and no one really knows what the reason was. Well, it's a gateway clock, you see. Before you know it, people will start bringing pocket watches, then wall clocks, then grandfather clocks, and before you know it, some kid walks in with Big Ben. Then what do you do? Can't wear too many matching shirts because you could be in a gang. This was in regards to a kid with cancer wanting to make a bunch of t-shirts. My school was in buttfrick nowhere, Nebraska. American schools seem to be obsessed with the idea of gangs. Oh, they really are. My public school in the 90s tried to make us wear private school-style uniforms. Avoiding gang colors was the big argument for this. This was an affluent school in the suburbs. Schools will latch on to any perceived potential transgression to enforce authoritarian rules, which is how you end up with teen girls carrying ibuprofen for period cramps being treated like smack traffickers. Our school banned hugging because of its eroticism. As you can imagine, the boys at school started giving each other very sensual high fives for the rest of the year. There is no group that takes homoeroticism more seriously than late middle to high school boys, apart from maybe the military. Haha, love these kids. My friends and I would have done exactly the same thing. I can picture the slow high fives, clasping fingers, and incredibly suggestive moans. Perfection. No backpacks to class, but purses were allowed. Girls started carrying purses big enough to be considered a backpack. Guys got teed off and started carrying purses as well. Ha! I'll just bring my books in a microwave. Huh. Or you could go the tall girl way and carry around a milk crate. Middle school had banned salt and pepper from being used in the cafeteria, claimed it was too unhealthy. Still sold Mountain Dew in the vending machines, though. School I used to teach at had similar rules. Some bullcrap about federal nutrition standards or something. We'd just keep them in the teacher's lounge along with hot sauces and chamoy and a few other condiments and leave them on our desks. In my freshman year of high school, we had a terrible vandalism problem. The bathrooms would be broken in various ways almost constantly. In a stroke of pure genius, the staff decided that any bathroom that was vandalized would be closed off for the week on first offense, closed for the quarter for the second one, and permanently on the third offense. They took back the rule after closing every bathroom on day one. The prom was a mandatory lockdown for the night in order to avoid students going to parties after prom. Prom was held at various houses across the town instead. I hate it when schools shoved their noses into everyone else's business. Oh, we had overnight dry grad. It wasn't a dance, but more like a game night. There were bouncy houses, obstacle courses, and other games and stuff, plus food, obviously. It was fun, but by about 4 to 5 a.m. I was pretty tired and asked if I could go home. No go. They wouldn't let anyone out of class unless their parents came and got them, or it was an emergency. It was stupid as heck since we were 17 or 18 and had driven ourselves to the school, and all it did was make us drive home overtired at 7 a.m. I'm surprised everyone made it home all right since we were basically sleeping against walls and each other by the end of it. Shoes are to be worn as the manufacturer intended. I have no clue who was wearing their shoes incorrectly or how, but this line verbatim was repeated to us over the morning announcements when there were perceived infractions at various points throughout the year. They decided everything bad happened in the last 5 minutes of lunch, so lunch got 5 minutes shorter each year. Any group that had more than 5 had to be up to no good, so no groups bigger than 5. This wasn't some big city public school for troubled kids, it was a tiny Catholic school in a tiny farming town. The worst offense by a student of the whole time I was there was some kid walking across the street to get a soda from a store. If you were involved in a fight, you got suspended. While it sounds reasonable, context didn't matter. I got suspended once for not throwing a single punch, kick, or whatever. I got suspended because somebody knocked the books out of my hand, and when I reached down to grab them, they punched me in the face. I got suspended for walking down the hallway and unprovoked getting punched in the face. Screw Brandon Valley Middle School. My buddy got suspended for something similar. His Marine Corps military police mother told him in no uncertain terms that if anyone tried that crap again, earn that suspension. Frickin' surprise, surprise, the guy tried it again and he went ham on the kid. Busted nose, torn ear, black and blue for weeks. The fallout was exactly the same as not fighting back at all, except my buddy got a pat on the back from his mum and a new video game. Tell you what, nobody tried that with him again. If it wasn't zero tolerance, then it wouldn't be a problem. If someone gives you some physical trouble and they get punished, easy peasy. They've got cameras everywhere. Surely it would be pretty easy to see. You couldn't wear any kind of head items that were gang colors, as in red or blue. This included hairbands, scrunchies, beads in your hair, ribbons, anything. I got in trouble for wearing a blue hairband with white polka dots. Don't joke about the polka dot cartel. My high school mascot was Daniel Boone holding a musket. A kid wore a Guns N' Roses shirt to school and was told he had to change shirts because of the pistols on the shirt. He pointed out the hypocrisy of the school mascot, and they changed everything. The mascot was switched to holding a flagpole instead. Every instance of the mascot was changed from the multiple signs outside and around the school to the giant picture in the middle of our basketball stadium. Holden, you're a frickin' legend for this. I mean, hey, at least this shows a consistent internal logic and a lack of hypocrisy on the part of the school admin, although definitely a lack of self-awareness too. Suspension as a punishment for skipping school. Don't want to come to school? Well, now you can't, until next week. And no tank tops in a desert climate, because shoulders are too suggestive for school. They banned hats because hats can be used to signify gang colors. The only major crime group in our area was the Hells Angels, and they certainly weren't having people wear hats for children to signify their allegiance. It was so bad a few years after I graduated, I came back to volunteer as a chaperone for a school trip as a favor for my favorite teacher. The principal saw me wearing a beanie from across the school and he literally sprinted a half mile to chase me down and tell me to take off the hat. When I told him I wasn't a student and didn't have to follow the dress code, he said either take off the hat, leave, or he'd call the cops. It wasn't the actual day of the trip, I just had to show up to get the itinerary and stuff, so I just said, F you, I'm out, idiots. Yeah, that's a great way to get rid of the free help that you need in order to have the trip in the first place. Our adult chaperones were allowed to ignore rules that applied to us kids all the time. And sure, we complained about it, and the teachers just told us to shut up. That's how it worked, and how it probably should work. We had percentage grades, and if you earned 100% in a class for the semester, you'd be dinged down to 99% because, and I quote, only God is perfect. As far as I know, this wasn't an official rule, and I only know of it happening one time to the girl who eventually became our valedictorian. But that was the reasoning she was given. It was a Catholic girls' high school, and there were a lot of other weird, strictly enforced rules, especially around the uniform, but the only God is perfect rule will always take the cake for me. Did they just cut the percentage of a single person? Oh my god. You got in trouble if you just wore a Hanes white t-shirt after school because you were in your underwear. You might as well just wear your literal underwear to make a statement at that point. My high school banned t-shirts that had the cover of Rush's album Signals, an album popular at the time, which features an image of a dog sniffing a fire hydrant. They considered it scatological because the dog was about to pee on it. This struck the entire student body as extremely stupid, and roughly half of the student body picked a day to wear the t-shirt. We won. Oh my god, imagine how terrible it would be if kids found out that dogs pee. We weren't allowed to have cough drops in our elementary because the school considered them substances. I mean, God help you if you have a headache. Oh, you need aspirin? Well, you need to eat more fiber because that's tough crap. No fist bumps. Their reason for this was that kids might accidentally punch the other person in the face. The school I went to was in a pretty rough area, so there were lots of incidents where kids ended up getting into actual fights. Took all of the doors off the men's bathroom stalls because of vandalism for 2 whole months. Same at my school, but for all of 4 years. We had no toilet paper or mirrors either. We were all given these ugly planners at the beginning of the school year, with a few pages at the back filled with hall passes. If you didn't have your planner, or if all of your boxes were filled, you weren't allowed to go to the bathroom. And no, you couldn't buy a new planner or borrow one from your friend. The only reason you had was if you had a doctor's note, but no doctor was going to give a note for an upset stomach caused by the school lunch. Oh wow, I totally forgot about this until you said this. We had those too. Some teachers gave extra credit to kids who'd never used any of their hall passes. I went to a school that had block scheduling, so our classes were 2 hours long. Pretty messed up that we were incentivized to never use the bathroom now that I think back on it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? No jackets. They think we might hide things like phones or bombs in there. We had to wear belts. Somebody snitched that people weren't wearing belts under their sweaters, and they actually checked and a bunch of people got detentions. Stupid. We had belt raids at my high school where the dean would burst into classes, completely interrupting any education, to check that everyone was wearing a belt. Attended an all-girls high school. You had to bring a male date to dances or not attend at all. No going solo or with your girl mates. It was so backwards. All of the girls, in my 6th or 7th grade, started putting pink laces in their shoes. I don't know why, but the school officials banned colored laces, saying, "Pink is a gang color." Girls must wear skirts even in the cold black rain. No fitted clothes for girls. This was high school. If the swell of your chest or butt were visible due to tight fabric, you had to go home. This wasn't a religious school. This was just a school run by dumb pieces of crap. My freshman dorm at a religious college had a list of rules that filled a legal-sized sheet of paper. It included being in your room for forced study time every night, keeping your towels straight on the towel rack, and making your bed by 9 a.m. every day, including weekends. So, if you wanted to sleep in on Saturday morning, you were supposed to get up, make your bed, and then go back to sleep on top of the bed. Involved in a fight? Same punishment regardless of fault, and this led to more dangerous fights due to everyone just going for it. Saw people use chairs, cricket bats, and anything that was just at hand. Getting expelled from that school was really hard as it was the last chance school in the area, and after that it was the special reform school. My high school had half of the bathrooms closed off at all times because they feared the students would smoke. A girl and a boy couldn't sit together. The school employed disciplinarians to roam around the school and monitor this activity. If found, you'd get a reprimand. If found repeating the offense, you got sent to the principal's office, and if continuing, then eventually it escalated to the parents. My parents would have just laughed if my school told them I sat next to a girl. We can't use black pens. Why? No more than 5 friends could hang out together during lunch. Our high school principal was trying to crack down on gangs, but I never saw a single teacher enforce the rule. No backpacks in the halls. Oh yeah, because carrying all of our books between classes was a great frickin' idea. Plus, hardly any time between classes to exchange books meant carrying multiple classes' things at once. Okay, update. Looks like this is the norm for quite a few people in school districts. Doesn't make the rule any less stupid. But to be fair, it depends on your school. My middle school was 8 or so classes a day with 3 minutes between classes in a large school where classes could be a far distance away from your locker. My high school was 4 classes and a much smaller building, but my friend's high school was similar to my middle school situation. I don't know, we had the option of having backpacks, and a few psychopaths like me just carried all of their books for every class around all day, but when given the option, most people just used their lockers, so I don't imagine it would be devastating if that rule were implemented in some schools, to be honest. Your situation in middle school does sound a bit crazy, though. No playing on the mini-golf course. Due to the school having mineral rights on oil land in the mid-70s, our school system had huge amounts of money. One thing they did was get 9 concrete animals on the playground for miniature golf. These looked like a lot of fun to play on for kids, and they were concrete, so they were indestructible. They took up a third of the absolute center of the playground. We couldn't touch them, play on them, or get anywhere near them. In PE, we broke out the putters 1 time in all of grade school. A few years later, they had the high school seniors take them out with sledgehammers. My school banned backpacks at one point. To protest, boys just didn't bring anything with them to class, and girls brought really big purses. The $200 blazer was compulsory, and we got detention every single day until we got it. No rubbing linseed oil into the school cormorant. No beards. If we spoke our native language instead of English, we had to pay a fine of about 30 to 40 cents. Zero tolerance for bullying. The faculty were the worst ones. Too many double standards. They had no problem enforcing it when a student was doing the bullying, but did absolutely nothing to punish the teachers when they did it. Ugh, yeah. Having to stand and take punches, only to have the principal inform you that your assailant was part of the basketball team, so… Particularly inconvenient since our school had a tradition of contract hits, and the captain of the basketball team decided he didn't like me, so I ended up with a few junior varsity players who didn't ride my bus making cameos. The one time he actually did something himself, he snatched the bill out of my hand while I was zoned out in the lunch line. I could have popped him one and went on with my day, but nope, I had to follow him until he got bored of the attention. Great policy, that zero tolerance. They banned dodgeball. Oh yeah, me too. They banned soccer once. No hats, period, unless you were devoutly Jewish or Muslim or some other religion that required it. No torn pants, skirts, or other articles of clothing, which wasn't enforced at all, they still have that rule today. And no long jackets for boys. It was just fine for girls. School added thumbprint scanners at gates of school which counted as registration. Needless to say, I'd just walk to my school, scan my thumb, and walk back home with them none the wiser. It was a great few months until they finally noticed. Wait, months? We weren't allowed to wear plain red, blue, yellow, or white tees because of the white tee song and the idea that there might be t-shirt gangs. A second one was named after my crew. A second rule was put in place because of my crew. We weren't allowed to have any comic or anime artwork during school hours, and students couldn't exchange money with each other unless the teacher approved. Girls can't show your shoulders or above the fingertips with your hands straight against your legs. Boys could wear tank tops with holes in them and basketball shorts, and girls were sent home if their damned t-shirt had a neck hole too big. Well, shoulders are the most enticing part of the female body. School I went to once had a policy against drinks that weren't water. Granted, I love me some water, but it sucks not to be able to have a nice Gatorade or something in school once in a while. Well, until I just bought a metal water bottle and circumvented that rule pretty quickly. One-way hallways. Like, just let me get to class, who gives a crap? A kind of candy because people would pretend to smoke it. I don't know if it's dumb or funny, though. We weren't allowed to play tag or football at lunch, only frisbee. When I asked the principal about what the difference was, he responded with a sarcastic tone, "A football is round and a frisbee is a flat disc." He left the school later that year, went into another school, and a few years later was brought up on charges for failing to report the mistreatment of a student by a teacher. Great guy. In elementary school, only grade 5 or 6 to grade 8 ate in the lunchroom. We'd have a lunch monitor stand at one end of the cafeteria watching all of us eat, and none of us were allowed to get up. The only reason we could stand up was to go to the washroom, and we'd have to raise our hand to be allowed to stand. When the lunch recess bell was about to ring, we'd have to be dismissed, table by table, to throw out our garbage before we headed out. Conservative Christian college. A group of us played Age of Empires one weekend. They didn't like it and called a meeting. Everyone involved got misdemeanors on their records. There was nothing in the handbook about it being against the rules. The only person that didn't get any punishment was the son of the president, even though he was just as involved as the rest of us. It was quite interesting explaining the write-up on my record when I transferred. Oh, you got a misdemeanor for what? They made it a rule after the fact and did this several other times with things such as nail polish or radio control helicopters. No fun allowed. I'm surprised you didn't show yourself converting other countries' infidel soldiers with the priests in that game. You know, the whole YOLO, I owe you, YOLO. Hey presto, look, they're Christians or Catholics or Lutherans or whatever belief the school was. Always had to have your shirt tucked in. Not a uniform, but literally just any casual clothes that were worn to school had to be tucked in. Basketball shorts and tank top, tucked in or you get sent home. Jeans and long sleeve, tucked. So goofy and authoritarian, but this was in a rural school in the south, so I'm not surprised. I was a rebellious 16-year-old at the time, and it teed me off like nothing ever has. Everybody had to eat lunch silently. No talking on Fridays. So developmentally inappropriate and leading to more talking during class time. Our primary school had this for a while, every frickin' day for like a week or two, and then they stopped it because no one was following the rule. This was circa 1994 through 97. No hugging, like at all. First offense was a write-up, second was a detention, third was in-school suspension. Locked bathroom doors in the period after lunch. You should have gone at lunch, is what they'd say. Also banned duct tape accessories when that was a trend. They said that it was a gang activity. What? Couldn't play tag outside. No wearing hats inside. No trading stuff from your lunch. This was all at my elementary. Early 80s. May. Girls in miniskirts, guys in running shorts. The miniskirt issue had been settled by the courts years earlier, and miniskirts were protected by law. Principal goes to a conference, and the VP bans running shorts as a distraction. So the football team shows up in miniskirts. Legends. I almost ended up hitting on the middle linebacker. He was in full drag and looked pretty good from behind. Delivery room drama. What happened when the baby didn't look like dad? A hospital where I was a med student had a baby born with a very serious genetic condition. Parents came in for genetic counseling, and testing revealed the woman's husband didn't carry the alpha gene of that condition. The couple asked what was the chance another baby of theirs would have this condition, and the doctors were honest and told them, well, 0%. They left it at that. My wife grew up in a really small town, but wasn't born there. When she got her first crush on a boy and told her best friend, that friend was like, "Did you talk to your mum yet?" Apparently, adultery was so widespread in this area, it was common practice for girls to talk to their mums about crushes and who the crush's parents were, so that they didn't end up dating their half-sibling. Had a mum-to-be who narrowed the options for baby daddy down to her top 3. She was having a C-section and didn't understand why all 3 potential dads couldn't come into the theater. She then asked if we could rotate them through, and maybe she'd let the one that was there when the baby came out be the real daddy. It took all of my professionalism to smile politely. I've just imagined a 9-year-old one-upping a kid from a gay couple by saying, "Yeah, well, I have 3 dads. Beat that." My wife worked as an intern in a law firm back in 1991. A woman was pregnant and subpoenaing men for paternity testing. She subpoenaed 19 men and all of them tested negative. Must have been a busy weekend for her. Not quite on topic, but African American babies usually are much lighter skin right after birth and then tend to get a little darker. The nurses usually warn the fathers about this, but I guess nobody had told this one guy. We were in a C-section and the baby came out significantly lighter than dad, and we all saw his face drop. Thankfully, the nurses saw it too and told him that the baby looked exactly like him. We all laughed about it later. A lot of white babies come out with blue eyes and lighter hair. I popped out and my mom's very white with blue-green eyes and light brown hair. My dad's a pretty dark Mexican dude. Most of his family was hyped that I had blue eyes, and my mom had to tell him that it wasn't going to last long, and now I have his hair and his eyes. Some of his sisters thought I probably wasn't his since we looked so different. Wait, Caucasians can go through the same transformation as kittens? I thought it was only cats that started off with baby blue eyes and gradually turned into, well, normal cat eyes. I had no idea this was a thing in any other animal than felines. The more you know. A nurse friend of mine told me about helping with a vasectomy when the doctor saw that the patient, a married father of 2 children, was clearly infertile and would have been all of his life. Due to the man taking Valium before the local anesthetic, the doctor made the guy come back for a follow-up where he had to explain the man's medical condition to him. No idea what the fallout was. A friend of mine is going through hell right now for the same reason. He went for a vasectomy and discovered he's been infertile his whole life. He did a paternity test on his 3 kids and none of them are his biological offspring. First, after my friend had the vasectomy, on the follow-up visit, the doctor told him that the chances of him having any kids were honestly miraculous. After he told his sister-in-law, she suggested a paternity test. When I asked him what the issue was, all he said to me, and I'm translating from Dominican Spanish here, is, "There's a couple of tubes missing, brother." The sister-in-law for years had said that her sister was a narcissistic C-word, but nobody took her seriously, not even me. His attorney started both a divorce and a case of impugnación de paternidad. No clue how to translate that. But if this last thing goes in favor of my friend, his name will be erased from the birth certificate, the kids will lose his last name and he'll no longer be recognized as the children's father. So no child support, but also no visitation rights and stuff. This takes time and there's almost no chance of an appeal since the biodad apparently will start the opposite and will sue for acknowledgement of paternity, meaning his last name on the birth certificate. No, my friend won't accuse her of fraud. I asked my dad this when he introduced my friend to his attorney, and they both said that might look vindictive to the court. At most, they could claim bad faith, but that would be a long shot too. Why my friend is going forward with a paternity challenge? Well, the main reason is 2 of the kids look like their mother, and the other one looks like the paternal grandfather, and my friend is afraid that in the future he might start resenting or hating the kids. By the therapist's advice, he's writing letters explaining to the kids why he did it in case one day one of them comes looking for him. No clue what he's writing, that's between him and the kids. The second reason is that he thinks they won't remember him. Third, he says that if he still takes care of the kids, he'd be rewarding his soon-to-be ex-wife and her lover. He's moved in with me and my wife fully, but he's an engineer and he's working in another province and the commute would be 4.5 hours round trip, so he stays at the place his company rented for him, and spends the weekends here for now. And yeah, he's doing better, he's no longer angry and irritable. He told me therapy and my cats have helped. Yeah, he still cries because he misses the kids. He confessed to me that his brain is telling him, F her, those kids aren't yours, but in his heart he knows those are his kids and he'll forever love them, and every night he cries himself to sleep watching pictures and videos of them. Yeah, that broke my heart and it's the reason I wish I could do more. I worked in a restaurant right after high school, and there's a couple who worked there as well. When the girlfriend got pregnant, she dipped out on him and moved back to her family in Alaska. After a month or so, the boyfriend got enough cash together to go follow her. He dropped out of college and got a job on her dad's fishing boat to support his new family. Months later, the baby is born, and it became more obvious why the girl took off. Because they're both white, and that baby was not. That guy's a class act. It's too bad his girl couldn't work up the courage to tell him the truth instead of just bailing out. Now she looks even worse. My brother's best friend didn't resemble his father while growing up, so he became more and more suspicious. The father eventually did a DNA test, when my brother's friend was 11 or 12, and found out it's not his. The parents split up with the older daughter, who's 16, going with the father because she resembled him, so he was sure about her. Whenever I hear stories about this, my admiration for my father grows just a little bit more. We now know that my brother, half-brother now I guess, is definitely not my dad's. Dad let me know like 10 years after separating from Mum. He explicitly told my sister and I that we should under no circumstances mention it to my half-brother because he'd be heartbroken. Dad still goes above and beyond to make sure my brother is happy. It's just incredible to watch. Alright, to answer some of the repeated questions I'm getting. You need to tell him everything or you're an awful sister. This isn't how real-life relationships work. This isn't a story of how a friend of mine cheated on her boyfriend, and should I tell her the truth, Redditor-san? Huh? I've known my brother for the 20-odd years of his life. We're each other's best friends. I also know that out of all of us, our parents' separation hit him the worst. As a teenager, he had to live with our mum who was mentally ill directly as a consequence of her 7 to 8 affairs becoming public. My sister and I were at college. He didn't tell anyone at the time and put on a strong face then. Now we see how much it affected him, his grades, and his entire personality. Not telling him now is the best thing we could do for him as a family that came to this discussion after hundreds of tears and sleepless nights. I don't expect most of you to understand the hell that this family has been through. As for health issues, we're a family of doctors. He's shown signs of a genetic disorder, and we've screened him for it. Luckily, he only seems to have the trait. There should be no other issues. A bunch of other people here have questioned my father's motives behind telling us the truth. Well, Mum's side of the family spread the rumor that they split up because my dad was having an affair, and that's why he left my mum. The reality is obviously very different. Dad had to tell us, first my sister and then me, when we asked why he would do such a thing. So, in conclusion, my brother shall be blissfully unaware until we feel the time is right, when he's in a better place mentally. We'll love him as we always have, and if I know him, I know that after he finds out, we'll love each other even more. I understand that by posting the story on a public forum, I did open things to judgment, but this is really beyond what I expected. Also, I've noticed that there seems to be an influx of messages to me which I'll politely ignore. Reading these generally sends my mood down, and getting the notifications in general stresses me out regardless of if the intent is good or not. I'll never put myself through that again. And that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, that's for sure one of those case-by-case basis discussions that you honestly need to weigh up depending on the situation of both the family and the individual. I'd say that I'm an advocate of telling people eventually at the right time. An immediate confession without a roadmap for how to deal with the fallout to your brother is a very reckless idea, and you're probably doing the right thing. I'm a midwife. I once had a woman come to my clinic unannounced. She wasn't a patient, but I'm NHS, so I saw her anyway. She had a man with her. She knew she was about 3 months pregnant, but hadn't come in for any antenatal care. I asked if she'd had relations the night before. She'd come in because she had a little bleeding. I looked at the partner, as Mum said yes, and he said, "Oh, nothing to do with me, I'm just the baby daddy." Turns out she had a new boyfriend at home. This was just the guy she'd been with 3 months before. I popped her up on the table to examine her, and straight away had to tell her that she was basically about 5 months along, but I'd arrange a scan to confirm. Baby daddy just got up and walked out. Turns out there was a third guy 5 months ago. I had a patient like this. She was like 28 weeks or something, pretending her last period was 2 months prior to my visit with her, and that this boyfriend of 3 months was the only potential father. When I explained that he was not, she asked what was the latest she could get a termination. Answer: quite a while ago in our area. My mum's friend has 3 sons to her ex-husband. 2 of them look like him, the second one looks a lot like the man she left her husband for, but of course they didn't get together until after she divorced her husband. Doesn't help how her new partner very clearly has a favorite kid. My money's on the first husband's child support bill, most certainly including the third child though. Can't think why. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? I had a doctor that thought my boy wasn't mine because he came out blonde with blue eyes. I'm half native with dark hair and green eyes, and my dad is blonde, blue, green eyes guy. My wife's a very dark brunette and her dad is a blonde, blue, green-eyed guy as well. It got grandfathered in. He's tested genetically as mine, but the doctor was very, very iffy. When I was a student nurse, there was this one couple. The mother was Asian and husband was white. The husband had a brother, African American. He's adopted from what I remember. The mother had been in labor for around 12 hours and they were very excited to see their baby. I remember the father had been pacing my entire shift back and forth in the waiting room. When it came time to mount the mother on the table, he asked the doctor if he could be in the room. He was grinning like a madman. It was a very positive energy. You could almost get completely absorbed by it. The doctor was a nice guy. He let us get him some throwaway scrubs and let him stay in the room. All in all, the actual birthing process was pretty standard. However, when the baby came out, then came the rough part. He was a normal, healthy, half African American boy, around 3 kilos. I just looked at the baby, then looked at the father, and watched his face go from joy to puzzlement to horror in about 10 seconds. The mother called out for her child, and the doctor, being all business, cut and suctioned the baby. I'm pretty sure that at that moment the father broke because he sort of stepped back and kept saying, "What the frick?" under his breath. I didn't get to see much of them for the next 2 hours, but I was there when the mother was brought to her room. Her husband and his brother were there as well, and she was talking to them. From what I saw, she was trying to console her husband, and his brother was trying to hug him. The husband just kind of kept shrugging off his brother's arms and crying into his hands. It was a really tough thing to see, but all in all, it wasn't really as dramatic as you'd expect. Not a doctor, but I worked in adoptions. A couple showed up wanting to discuss adoption. She was so obviously pregnant. The catcher, she and he both insisted that they'd never had any sort of relations of any kind, only heavy petting, and they assume some splooge had travelled through clothing. I don't know what happened because they never came back. This was all an assumption from me, but my assumption was that she did the deed with someone, just not the man who she was in a committed relationship with. I was a nurse for a urologic surgeon, so lots of vasectomies. Guy came in, teed off that he'd gotten his wife pregnant after his vasectomy. He had never originally followed up to make sure his swimmers were dead. The doctor had him leave a sample to look under the microscope. Went back to the exam room and told him his vasectomy had actually been completely successful. The guy just walked out. I'm a doctor, and the story actually involved my college. So I'm friends in med school with this guy who we'll call Nut. We're not close friends, but we have some common friends, and we shared some rotations together. And this girl, we'll name her Mary. Mary was already married at the time and had a 3-year-old daughter. Nut and Mary were close, but Mary got held back because Mary got pregnant and therefore had to temporarily stop studying. During that time, me and Nut became interns, and Nut began hanging out often with another girl named Belle. Nut and Belle weren't that close or physical with each other, so it came as a surprise when 2 months before internship ended, we found out that Belle was pregnant. Turns out that the two were fun buddies the entire time. Anyway, they graduated, and eventually Belle gave birth to a baby boy who looked like Nut's miniature clone. It was as if the baby got nothing out of the mother, at all. Some of us even joked that Nut's seed was just that strong that he doesn't create offsprings, he creates clones. Now, Mary eventually caught up with her studies and entered junior internship, so she got to rotate with some of us. And when she showed us the picture of her baby boy, he also looked exactly like Nut. Note that we know what Mary's husband looked like and what Mary's daughter looked like. Her son looked just like Nut. So much so that if you placed her son beside Belle's, you could easily mistake them as twins. And listeners, you'd better believe that we compared those two photos next to each other. Not sure what happens to them now. I moved to a nearby hospital, but I never really talked to any of the three. But last I heard from Nuts and my mutual friends, Nuts' partner, he claimed he won't marry her, and her son were left in a city around 4 hours away. Belle worked there. Mary's husband, daughter, and son were in the US. Mary's husband was studying aeronautics or something similar. And Nuts and Mary were on duty the same day at the same hospital. Well, looks like Nut might have lived up to his namesake. Sorry for the crude joke, but you guys set me up. Doesn't seem like a stand-up guy from the limited info we have, but it might be coincidence with Mary's kid, you never know. I read an article several years ago about a doctor who was involved in the studies about the Rh blood factor in the late 1930s or early 1940s. The study took place in a New York maternity hospital and was done with married couples. Blood samples were taken from newborn babies, the mother and father, and then tested. In about 10% of the cases, the results of the blood tests for a couple just didn't match what the Rh factor should have been. The doctor went to the mothers alone and asked if the husband was actually the father. Most of these women admitted the husband wasn't or he might not be. This was back in the 1930s and 40s with married women. My husband is a surgical technician. Years ago, he helped deliver a baby via emergency C-section. The baby was black and born to two very white parents. The dad freaked out and left the hospital with the mum in tears. The doctor convinced him to get a paternity test, and he did end up being the father. Genetics is weird. I love genetics. We're a white family, but every now and then a much darker baby is born. We have a distant ancestor from Africa, and we still carry that gene, I guess. It's mainly the men that show it, but some of us girls definitely have non-Caucasian elements too. I'm a father who had this happen to them, but it's fine. My wife and I adopted a set of embryos and my wife birthed them. The genetic parents are Chinese and Korean descendants. My wife and I are of European descent. We let the doctors know, and they all agreed to not tell one of the doctors in training who was a resident or something like that. When he'd come in to wiggle the twins' legs and do all the stuff, he'd look at my kid's eyes and then nervously glance at me, then do his exam and quietly walk out. I asked him a few questions about why they had such dark hair when my wife and I are lighter haired. He responded about grandparents and recessive genes. Pretty good future doc. On our second to last day in the hospital, the staff told him and he was very relieved. He was scheduling a chaplain visit for us. I work in an NICU, and frequently babies will come down to our units accompanied by their father while mum is still getting stitched up, and it's usually the time when fathers will question us about how to do a paternity test, or they'll ask us questions like, "Does this baby look half black to you?" or "Would you say this baby could be mine or not?" We've also had an occasion where mum has admitted to us that dad isn't baby's father, but we're not legally able to say anything, so we just have to pretend we know nothing. And we'll just submit a social work consult to look into the situation a bit more later. I know a couple that were very excited to have twins. Baby birthday comes, and mum and dad are in the delivery room, baby one comes out, and it's immediately clear they aren't his. He's white, she's white, and the babies are not. The community was shooketh. They're divorced now. A few people are commenting that it could be a throwback to a few generations ago. It wasn't in this case. The DNA tests proved that they were in fact the children of her co-worker. My dad told me this story. He was a non-commissioned officer in the army, and one night he received a call that the wife of one of his soldiers was in the hospital having a baby. His first response was, "So why are you calling me?" It turns out that the wife was 99.9% sure that the baby wasn't his, and she needed someone to make sure he didn't go crazy at the hospital. So, my dad drives down there, and he finds his soldier trying to push past the doctors into the delivery room. He's screaming that he has a right to be in there. My dad puts his hands on his shoulder, a preface to physically restraining him, and tells him that he can't go in. The guy must have realized that he wasn't getting in there because he just sank to his knees and started crying and kept saying, "I just wanted to see my son being born." It was apparent that he wasn't going to hurt anyone, so they got him to the waiting room, and my dad left thinking, I just watched the end of someone's marriage. Come Monday morning, the guy comes in with the biggest smile, walking around showing everyone pictures of his black baby. This guy was white, by the way. Of course, they questioned and ribbed him about it, but he'd just proudly say, "That's my son." Best case scenario to a messed up situation. I'm not sure how the family is doing now, but it seems like the kid would grow up with a father or two who loved him. Okay, I've got 2 stories that aren't exactly what you asked for, but still applicable, I think. 1. A woman came to the ER with abdominal pain. She was there with her girlfriend. We ran a pregnancy test as per protocol. You don't ever trust a patient when it comes to their bedroom history. So I got to break the news to this lesbian couple that one of them was unexpectedly pregnant. And yes, I tried to discreetly tell the patient the news alone, but she insisted that anything I had to say should be done in front of her girlfriend. Okay, but I don't think that was the prize she was expecting. Baby daddy showed up. Commotion ensued. Security had to get involved when the girlfriend started attacking baby daddy. And second, a teenage mum brought her newborn to the ER to be evaluated for something fairly minor. She was a new parent, didn't really know what she was doing. There was also this teenage guy in the room, so I asked his relationship to the patient. He said he was the stepdad. Apparently, he'd been dating the mum for about a month. The baby was about 3 weeks old. It took me a few minutes to wrap my head around that one. For his own sake, I really hope that dumb guy didn't sign the birth certificate. When my wife was in the hospital giving birth, there was another girl in the same room. Her husband was absolutely in love with her and soon-to-be-born son. I spoke a lot with this guy. We talked about how we're going to play with our kids and so on and so forth. After the birth, I never saw him again. But I saw the child. No way it was his. By the time she was in the hospital, he moved out and filed for divorce. She tried to sue him for child support and won. He left the country and doesn't pay. She's struggling with huge financial problems. My wife still has contact with her. No happy ending there. Something was off. Friends of killers reveal the first red flags they ignored. I sat next to him in choir class. He was always kind of off. He operated on his own wavelength, constantly in his own world, never really engaging with anybody. People just didn't really exist on his radar. On a class trip, we slept in the same hotel room, and he walked around undressed like I wasn't even there. I always assumed he was on the spectrum, but in hindsight, it might have been something much worse, like schizophrenia. He never seemed aggressive or anything, but nobody ever talked to him enough to make that conclusion in the first place. A few months ago, he ended his mother's life with a kitchen knife. It was so bad, dental records were needed to identify the body. He implied in his confession that he ate part of her. He waited until his dad came home from work to show him what he had done. Claimed he saw a sign from the devil that told him to do this. That might have been a lie. From what I heard, he was very excited to tell the police what he had done. And from what I do know about him, he might have said it for the attention. He turned himself in, waived his Miranda rights, and confessed to everything. When the cops found him, he was literally soaked in red. He refused to shower it off, so they had to hose him down before they put him in a cell. He's looking at 40 years in prison. His mum was an amazing woman. She tailored our suits for choir and was constantly volunteering. If there was an event, she was there. She was going to be her town's councilwoman next year. She loved her son very much and just didn't deserve to go like that. They were a regular customer in my shop. He'd come in after his shift to buy beer and tobacco. On one occasion, he caught and helped us evict a shoplifter. He seemed friendly enough. Then a local woman went missing and was eventually pulled out of a river a few weeks later. They announced that they were looking for somebody in connection with her death, and it was him. They had CCTV footage of him tailing her through a park and footage of him buying beer in a shop, still unconfirmed to this day being our shop as they blurred out the surroundings. Anyway, as we had a TV in our shop switched to the news channel, as it was a rolling story local to us, we started to discuss the guy, if we'd seen him on the day she went missing, that kind of thing. We hadn't, but it was at that point when one of my staff, a young girl, who had previously said to management that she didn't want to work the closing shift anymore because there were too many creepy men around, she told us that he used to stare at her when he came into the store in a way that made her really uncomfortable, enough to not want to be on the floor when he came in. They never got to question him about the murder, as he was found dead in a local park a few days later. He had strung himself up. Was that the Alice Gross case? I remember that one. Terrible, terrible circumstances. The killer was already a convicted murderer in Latvia, if I remember correctly. It was huge news locally. The biggest manhunt in London since the July bombings. Also, women frickin' know creeps. That's our biggest defense mechanism for real. I'm very respectful of someone's gut feeling as a result. My word, how did he get let into the UK with a record like that? I think there's of course room for rehabilitation of most folks, but this guy was still clearly unhinged, and I refuse to believe he had a diligently applied entry exam. Just awful. I went through primary and high school with a guy in the year below me who seemed a little, well, distant. We lived near each other and caught the bus from the same stop. He was a bit of a bully, but it was something more than that. Like, you could tell he wasn't a bully because he was hurting inside or because he felt threatened in some way. He was a bully because he did what he wanted to do and didn't realize that it hurt other people. Like the kind of kid who enjoyed pulling wings off flies. Not long after I left my hometown, I heard that he'd been charged with a murder of the sort that you just can't talk about on YouTube. Victim outside a category you can discuss here. Horrible business. He was sentenced to 36 years with a non-parole period of 27 years. Well, this is wild. I know a guy who slew a nurse and wanted to be our town's first serial killer. He bought a murder kit online and shanked her over 50 times. Let's call him Steve. I knew him through scouts. Now, to preface, our scout troop was pretty laid back. We didn't tend to bother with badges, and the two troop leaders were pretty cool guys. Mostly, we played silly games like crab football, we built catapults to fire stuff across the hall at each other. You get the picture. We were a little gang of misfits. But Steve was really weird. First time it came out was when he'd do this thing where he'd get his butt out and just dance around. At first it was like, oh, outrageous and funny, and he kept getting told to stop, but he kept doing it. It got a bit annoying. None of us were keen to see his bare arse after a while. Then it got boring, and then just outright weird when it's not remotely funny. No one was laughing, all of us other kids were asking him to stop, and he continued. He also used to bring in printouts of super gross adult magazines. Obviously, these were confiscated and thrown away. Again, he was clearly trying to gross people out for his amusement. A few times he was suspended for a week or so, but given that we were quite laid back and the troop leaders were good guys, they probably couldn't bring themselves to bin him off completely. It was a long time ago, so I can't recall all the details, but I recall him being quite childish in mentality, but also very creepy. When I found out he'd ended someone, I was shocked but not surprised. Then I remembered I'd played hide-and-seek in the dark with this guy in a hall with a kitchen full of knives. I moved to a new town when I was 19 and was making new friends at my job. I met this girl at work and she invited me over to hang out with her and her best friend. I went and the best friend's boyfriend was there and the vibes were way off. I was uncomfortable. He was cold and just seemed angry for no reason. They'd mentioned to me before he got there that he was always controlling and he had got physically aggressive with the girl before. Turns out, controlling was an understatement. She came home one day and he was digging a hole in the backyard, and she asked what he was doing, and he replied, digging your grave. He hit her, said if he can't have her, nobody could have her, all of that. So eventually she left him and had to get a restraining order and everything. He somehow persuaded her to get in a car with him on her work break, and they went missing for a few days. Turns out he had knifed her to death, thrown her in a river, and then ended himself. I met the girl only a few times, and him only the once, but the fact that I was in such close proximity to someone capable of that gives me chills. She was so young, it was really sad. I worked at a box store about 20 years ago. A guy I worked with was always off and would give away pocket knives to other employees. One day he came in with scratches all over his face. He'd committed the unspeakable act and then ended someone the day before, using a pocket knife he had given our coworker later that day. Friend of the family's always had a thing about taking pocket knives as a gift. A superstition about how it was bad luck and would result in the knife somehow ending up in your back, metaphorically speaking. Turns out it was a good piece of advice in this instance. My grandfather gave me a pocket knife when I was a little kid, but made me give him a penny for it. It's thought to sever the relationship when you give someone a knife as just a gift. I knew there was something off about him when he said there was. A teenager, his mother and his stepfather lived around the corner from me. My mother knew them better than myself, but we all thought they were lovely. A couple of years ago, the son went to the hospital several times asking for help. He claimed he had voices telling him to kill his stepfather, but each time he went, he was released and told to come back, and they'd give an appointment. A few weeks later, during a small argument, he knifed his stepfather to death in the front garden. He turned himself in the next day, and wasn't convicted as he sought help before it happened. Instead, he got the treatment he needed. I see a lot of people wondering if it might have been a defense or planned murder. It wasn't. The way he was killed and how the son acted after removed any doubt. My uncle murdered somebody and is currently serving life in prison. From my earliest memory, I knew he had some screws loose. He caught his wife at her lover's house, so he shot the guy. He was going to shoot her too, but she convinced him she wouldn't tell anyone. He burned the guy's house down in an attempt to cover his tracks. As soon as his wife could get free of him, she immediately reported him. As far as me saying I always got creep vibes from him, he always reminded me of a poor man's Charles Manson. I knew a guy who killed his dad with a baseball bat, was found not guilty. I met his dad when he came into the bar I worked at, and that guy was a nightmare. He'd squeeze people's hands when he shook them. He and his son were both boxers, and the dad was really rough with him apparently. The day he was found not guilty, he sent a text to someone at the bar saying, "I told you I'd get off." Man, that hand-squeezing thing is messed up, and I've experienced it and truly believe it's the mark of a sadist. I remember one guy doing it to me when I was a little girl and how his eyes gleamed as I yelled and finally managed to grab my hand back. There's a lot of closet weirdos out there. Cue the narrator realizing he's met a lot of sadistic people by this narrow definition you've given. And I'll admit, I've never met a painful squeezer who you could rule off as not being an absolute sadist. I worked in a food court in my early 20s. This family would come in pretty regularly. They stuck out because they were giants. Mum was easily 6'1" and Dad was 6'7". They had a few offspring too. Nothing really stuck out at the time. They never seemed happy, but they never fought. They just always looked like they were just coming out of mourning. I heard a few years back that the mum decided to leave the dad. The dad ended the whole family and then removed himself from the picture as well. Another coworker did something similar. He lived with his elderly father. He was super nice, but just always had this deep sadness behind his face. His girlfriend broke up with him, his dad's health went south, everything became too much for him. So he shot his dad and then used the weapon to take himself off the running as well. Even after hearing that, I felt bad for him. He seemed like a guy with a big heart, and if he'd just had a day to decompress and someone to talk to, I think that might have gone a lot differently. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? My ex-coworker was always a huge jerk who nobody liked to work with. He'd always be on his phone and talking to someone, even when he had a customer waiting to order in the drive-thru. The moment I knew he had something wrong with him was when I caught him looking for his dab pen in one of the lockers in the back room. He always used a top locker, but he was searching through one at the bottom, which happened to be my locker for that day. I told him that, so he just stared me in the face for a second and walked away. Later that same year, I learned that he shot and ended someone at a gas station. To clarify, he was most likely trying to steal from me, and the fact that he made up his lie on the fly set me off, not to mention the creepy stare at the end. I was running a video game program for kids a few years ago, and one day an older, 19-year-old teen came in. I didn't want to allow him in, but one of my coworkers had already said it was okay. He exhibited a lot of completely unacceptable behaviors. When I told him to stop, he did the same thing you described, just stared at me for a few seconds without saying anything. There was nothing in those eyes. I went home and told my boyfriend at the time that I'd met someone who'd end up as an unspeakable act offender or murderer someday. And well, to put it bluntly, I was right. The murderer's mother ended up turning him in. I never suspected a thing. She was the nicest woman. I even let her babysit my cousin when I had custody of him for a little while. She was my neighbor, a couple of houses down the road, and everybody loved her. She grew gigantic pumpkins, was always outside, so everyone interacted with her a lot. I moved away, and a few years later, I was shocked to hear everything from my family and friends who still lived in the area. The story, she was married to a man. I knew him from my time living there too. One day, he was just gone. She was all beaten up. She said he beat her up. We always suspected this had happened before the incident, and he had left her because he got another woman pregnant a few towns over. We never heard from him again, but didn't really have a reason to. She'd mention every once in a while that he was still making her life a misery, and she even ended up beat up on another occasion after this disappearance. He was self-employed and didn't really have any family, so none of us had any reason to suspect anything. 3 years later, she was dating another man. While dating this man, the police had been investigating her for stealing money from the grocery store she worked at. They went to the boyfriend's cabin, where they both were, to arrest her. She came to the door, said, "Okay, let me go put on some clothes." The police waited at the door. I obviously wasn't there for this part, so this is what I've heard. The police then heard 2 shots. They ran inside and she had poured gasoline and set the house on fire, then shot her pet and taken herself out of the running as well. It took some time to get the house fire under control. Once they did and began investigating, They found another body in the basement that didn't die in the fire, but several days earlier. The body in the basement was her boyfriend. Then they began investigating further and found a blue 55-gallon drum in her backyard that contained her husband. So, she had killed 2 people and her dog, and all she was suspected of was stealing from the grocery store. Is it weird that I feel she could have gotten away with it if she would have stepped out of the house and gone with the police? There's a chance they wouldn't have investigated the cabin depending on exactly how the grocery theft went down and what they wanted to see. Guilty conscience. She probably thought they had more on her and were just taking her on the grocery charge to begin with. The murderer I knew was more of an acquaintance or casual friend. He lived down the hall from me and we hung out sometimes, but not like just the 2 of us. Still, we'd chill at each other's place regularly. I passed him one day in the stairwell and I said hi. He said hi back, but called me by the wrong name. He was really distracted and kind of awkward. He didn't make eye contact and just kept moving. I remember thinking, maybe we don't know each other as well as I thought. Later he was playing Nintendo, yep, my Nintendo 64, this was a while ago, with my roommate when I came home. He apologized and said, sorry, his mind was elsewhere. Couple of days later, there were cops all over the building, interviewing people and searching his place. They'd found the guy's roommate with a bullet in the back of his head in an abandoned lot across town. The next day, he confessed. There was a kid I went to high school with who always gave me the creeps. We had a lot of mutual friends, so we'd always end up hanging out, and it always made me feel really uncomfortable. Our senior year, he got suspended for like a week because somebody had found and turned in a hit list that he'd made. No one had really taken it too seriously, though. About 3 years after we graduated, he was in the news for murdering a man in our town that he barely knew. He told the police that he held the man's eyes open so he could actually watch his life leave his body. Updating this because I remembered that I actually knew a second murderer. I'm related to someone who attempted to murder his wife by knifing her in the back several times with a butter knife when she found out he was gay, and then many years later he did the same to his new partner, successfully, after they broke up. Some real mixes between unassuming serial offenders of this sort and the kind who really project it well in advance, and who often end up coming clean. Just goes to show how it could be anyone, I guess. Sleep tight, folks. I would never have guessed. He was the sweetest, kindest, gentle giant of a guy. Kind of a weirdo, but still a great guy overall. I remember once that he shed a tear just by walking about his kid because he was so filled with emotion from having him in his life. He ended up killing his wife, running away with his child, starting the longest Amber Alert in the history of Canada. As he tried escaping to a different province, he killed another man to steal his car. I'm still unsure today if I should have seen anything at any point. It comes to haunt my nightmares from time to time. Had an employee on my work crew, acting strange and not listening to direction, had goofy, huge sideburns, ended up going to jail for a short time. When he got out, he shot his girlfriend and her parents. Looking back, I should have known immediately, but I didn't even know what I was seeing. In 2016, I was working as a server. One of my coworkers was always complaining about her crappy husband and how they always fought. They were from Chicago and kind of just always loud and aggressive, so I didn't think much of it. One night, they both came in for dinner and drinks and sat in my section, and I was looking forward to finally meeting her husband so I could give him a face. I just remember not being able to look him in the eye, feeling super uncomfortable anytime I needed to go over to their table, because my friend would try to spark conversation and I wanted to talk to her, but the guy's presence just sitting there would make my skin crawl. They left that night, but soon she stopped coming to work, and then a couple of weeks later, news broke about them both being found dead in their apartment, the husband being the murderer. It was heartbreaking, and I no longer take lightly word of domestic disputes. I never would have suspected. Quiet, shy lad at school with a small circle of friends. Started losing his hearing as a teenager and became increasingly frustrated and angry. A minor disagreement in a pub, possibly caused by him not hearing the other guy, turned into a fight and he glassed him. The other guy bled out. One of the smartest, most popular, and friendliest guys at my high school. He stood up for people who got bullied. He included everyone. He helped people that needed it all the time. Seemed like an utterly selfless guy. Literally everyone loved him. 2 years ago, he ended his wife and then self-deleted after an argument. I knew this kid my entire life. We were friends in elementary and middle school. More middle school. He was your typical redneck kid, but a kind person. Imagine if Pinky from Pinky and the Brain grew up in the rural South. Well, as people do in school, we drifted apart. He honestly wasn't the person in the group I was friends with, he was just in that circle. So we went about our lives. A year after we graduated in the same town we all grew up in, he did in his entire family. Just for no reason. Nothing really provoked him from my understanding. He left and went to ride ATVs with his friend later that same day. They caught him and he had no memory of it. He went to court and got life and never could recount a single moment. At least that's what he said. It was weird seeing this guy who was, to your knowledge, just dumber than a bag of hammers, yet had an odd innocence to him, on trial for such atrocities. He just sat stone-faced the entire time, almost like he didn't understand what had happened. Not to say I felt bad for him, but I felt something. Sadness in general, perhaps? My bio dad ended up murdering my stepmom. Everyone in my family, my mum, and 2 older brothers definitely knew something was up with him. He had severe anger issues and was a horrible bully. Some of my earliest memories I have are of him being horrible to my brothers and I. He even almost throttled my mum to death a couple of times. Obviously, my mum was smart and divorced him, as she didn't want to see him end us. Years later, I come home from school and my mum and stepdad take us all to the side and tell us that he's shot our stepmom and is currently in jail. None of us were surprised. If anything, I was just so grateful that my mum left him. It's just so strange that I'm directly related to a murderer. This is my grandmother's story. She got pregnant at a young age by my grandfather and had to get married because it was the 1960s. He was a horrible man, and my grandmother went to the police multiple times because she felt like he'd wind up killing someone, but they just didn't take it seriously and ignored her. He later went on to throttle and beat someone to death with a baseball bat just a couple of years later. I'm editing this to include because I've seen a couple of people asking or speculating, but my grandmother did get away from him. They'd been separated when this finally went down, and he was put in prison. But I do know that he got out, and from what I was told, it was on an insanity plea. I'm not 100% on the details of his release, as he's a pretty taboo topic. But he finally died in 2014, though I didn't find that out until a year later. I'd only ever met him once. The internet admits what they still don't understand. Questions answered. How can we lose so much hair every day and still have hair stay consistent length? Especially people who have long hair. Alright, say you lose 100 hairs a day. That seems like a lot. However, most people have around 100,000 hairs on their scalp. That's only 0.1% of the total amount of hair you have, and those hairs start to grow back again pretty quickly. I just don't get how I get taller and more handsome every time my grandma sees me. Well, either because you're simply one hunky fella, or your gram is progressively shrinking and losing vision. I'm betting on the former being the case, though. How people get up in the morning feeling good and refreshed. I've woken up tired since before I can remember. I don't remember if they just mentally power through the tired or if they feel something I don't or can't. I will say if you get enough sleep, eat right, exercise, and stay hydrated, you can still feel energized all day despite how you feel when you wake up. I'm just not a morning person, and that's okay. Why the frick does my brain only realize I'm wrong after I've already done it? This is me playing chess. The order of emails in a Gmail thread. The one you're looking for is always hidden somewhere in the middle. I really don't get how a needle in a record player bouncing back and forth can create such rich sound. And I'm going to confuse you even more. Look up CED video discs. They're basically records but are movies, and are still read by that same needle. I have a CED player. I have no idea how it works. It just does, and it's insane. The YouTube algorithm. Yep, you and me both, my dude. It eludes us all, viewers and creators alike. Still to this day, don't know why I'm getting Malcolm in the Middle clips suggested to me in 2026. Waking up early, like 4 AM, to go to work. Whoever invented it is a butthole. There's a kid in my high school that lives so far away he has to wake up at 3 frickin' AM to get to school on time. Like, what? How some people seem to get through life without a job, with no responsibility, no money, and they're totally fine. Meanwhile, I'm busting my butt trying to make a living for myself and my family, and struggling like hell. This right here, I've got a buddy exactly like this. He's super charismatic and just has connections that hook him up with all sorts of fun stuff. He actually wasn't that great of a friend because he'd always blow everyone off because something better came along. Why people, when you're driving, have the audacity to pull in front of you and then drive slow as F when there's literally no other cars around. Like, just wait for me to pass if you're going to go 5 to 10 miles per hour under the speed limit. Why the hiring process at most companies is so damn slow. Back in the 60s, you could walk into a business asking about a job on Friday and start work the following Monday. Now, despite having access to tons of information about a candidate on the internet, it takes 6 or more weeks in many cases. My ex once interviewed for a job and thought she did terribly. She never heard back at all, so accepted something else that she'd interviewed for at the same time. They called her almost 2 months later to tell her that they'd accepted her and she had the job. Her response? No, I've got a job, and why would I even want to work for a place that treats future employees like that? They seemed generally confused that she wasn't waiting for them to call her. This is totally due to me not looking it up, but I don't know how dry cleaning works. It's understandable. It's a liquid like a solvent that's water-free. Oh, I thought it was called dry cleaning because they dried it up afterwards. I thought it was called dry cleaning because they had a method of cleaning where the clothes don't get wet. I honestly thought they blew air so hard in a tumbling device like washing machine that dirt and stains just got yeeted out. Bitcoins and NFTs. Frick me, NFTs are stupid. What's an NFT? It stands for non-fungible token. Basically, it's a digital signature saying you own the original of a digital, quote, artwork. There can be unlimited copies, but you own the original. People say it's like owning the original of painting instead of a print, but it's not. It's more like making a whole bunch of prints and then destroying the original painting, and then saying that one of those prints is the original. It's the dumbest frickin' nonsense I've ever heard. Unless, of course, you believe in that conspiracy theory that all expensive art is just a massive money laundering scheme, in which case, NFTs make perfect sense. How electricity works. Amps, volts, and watts, etc. Ugh. Amps are how many electrons flow. Volts are the force with which the generator is pushing these electrons. Watts is the amount of energy carried every second. This, of course, depends on the amount of electrons, so the amps, and the force they're pushed, so the volts. Watt-hours. If the watt is the speed of energy transfer, this is the distance. That's the total amount of energy you transfer, which means that if you have 200 watt-hours of energy available and something consumes 100 watts, you can only power it for 2 hours. If it consumes 50 watts, you can power it for 4 hours. Those people who do parkour on high buildings. One mistake and you're dead. Well, they get a buzz out of that feeling of risk, so they keep doing it to keep replicating that buzz. If it were safe, they wouldn't do it because there'd be no excitement. I think a better question is how they don't die more frequently. Honestly, I think they do get injured severely and killed regularly. Their friends just don't post those videos. Stocks, investments, inflations, interest rates and stuff, or anything to do with finance really, that stuff is so confusing to me. Why it's so damn hard to be happy 95% of the time when you have a stable job, good health, family, and everything. Like, I have all of the pieces, but something is constantly missing. Ugh. As a side note, I'm fine, it's just annoying. People who don't get nervous when public speaking. It's particularly weird for me because I'm a nervous wreck right up until I actually start presenting. I once did a summer internship thing where we all had to present our stuff at the very end, and I had people years later telling me how impressed they were by my confidence. Little do they know that I was strategizing ways of removing myself from the entire situation. Maybe if I just go to the bathroom and they skip me, then forget to come back to me at the end. Or I could pretend to have lost my voice. How about those sudden flashes of motivation you get at midnight? I've read that it's due to there being no pressure or thoughts of what could go wrong. This is due to the fact that the motivation is typically for things that would be in the future or carry over into the future, and there's no reason to start or finish the things being thought of at that moment. My intentions when doing things. It seems that I can attribute everything I do to manipulation and attention-seeking, and that's kind of unsettling. Take the introspection one step further. Attention-seeking and manipulation are both ways of having one's needs met. Try and figure out what need it is that you're striving for. Most people want the same basic things: essential love and safety. Most people who employ these tactics have an external locus of identity, meaning their sense of self-worth is more informed by the reflection of worth from others rather than from their own understanding of their value. Attention-seeking is very broad, but most often when I see that term used, I see a person who's trying to ensure they're recognized as a person of worth, that the people around you care about you and will show up when you need them to. Manipulation is often due to a lack of trust in others meeting one's needs without coercion. Maybe because those needs aren't appropriate or not perceived to be, or the skills to ask or encourage others are underdeveloped. Maybe you have people in your life who aren't interested in meeting your needs when they're expressed in appropriate ways. Everything we do is meant to meet some need. Often trivial, but sometimes foundational. Try and understand what need or value could be prompting your actions. It can be very helpful in finding better ways to meet them and to understand yourself. Assess if the people in your life would be willing and capable of meeting your needs appropriately. A therapist can be a huge help for both of these. And remind yourself that you're a human, you have needs and have found effective ways of meeting them, ways that likely have been ingrained since you were a kid. Once you better understand those needs, you can start finding better ways to meet them. Most importantly, be compassionate with yourself as you explore this. You're a human and doing the best you can to survive and be whole. Good luck. I'm glad that someone can finally have the introspection to identify that everything they do is motivated by a need for attention, to be honest. Being a guy who does a fair bit of performing arts stuff in his spare time, you meet a lot of wonderful people who have that same characteristic, but are painfully unaware of it, and it's not really a thing one can bring up easily to them. Oh well, comes with the trade. Bitcoin mining? Solving algorithms? What? Who? Why? Imagine if keeping your car idling 24/7 produced solved Sudokus you could trade for smack. My friends, I've paraphrased this from something I read years ago, and the original source is apparently a tweet. Generating endless random numbers, combining them with the result of an arbitrary mathematical operation with a small amount of data from a previous block in the chain, and ignoring all results other than the one that matches a very specific, very difficult, but entirely arbitrary rule. All of this work to make it impractical, the same way that cracking passwords is, for any one person to commit fraud on the network even without a central authority, because the cost is prohibitively high. Okay, people are writing into me quite mad because I haven't explained where this creates value, so here we go. From me having not made it clear, I'm talking about blockchain, not cryptocurrencies. It doesn't. We assigned it value, and most of it is likely just the buy-in cost. We're talking your hardware, ongoing energy costs, the constant increases in difficulty for mining, and the people who already have too much money on their hands treating it as a speculative investment. There's also the whole topic of it being fairly anonymous and used to buy and sell substances. There's absolutely no intrinsic value in cryptocurrencies. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Space. It makes my brain hurt trying to figure out things like stars and black holes. The size and distances with space are just so hard to fathom. The time it takes to get anywhere is depressing. The sizes and distances of it all are absolutely mind-boggling. It's so massive and far that it has to be measured in the amount of distance that light can travel in a year. And light travels 186,000 miles per second. I feel so insignificant just thinking about it. But it can also be kind of comforting in a way, because that means all of my problems are also insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Why do people who seem miserable as parents decide to have more kids? I'd like to direct this question towards the parents I currently nanny for. The father clearly doesn't like his kids and has said before he never even wanted kids, yet they have three. 3 children that are quite honestly some of the worst behaved kids I've ever worked with, and I've been working with kids in and out of a school setting going on 15 years now. Why didn't you stop after the first one? It's the puppy principle. They want something to love, something that loves them, but once the potty training and the cast and the medical stuff comes up, it's all just an in-the-moment decision. That no concept of an absolute position in space exists. Chemistry. I only passed because my professor curved every F to a C. The stock market. Anyone want to explain it like I'm 5? Alright, I'll try. You have a nice little company. You decide, hey, I'm going to let anyone buy a little piece of my business. It'll raise a bunch of money for my company, and in exchange, the buyers will own a little piece of it. You sell these little pieces of your company, or shares of it, to lots of your neighbors and friends who buy these little pieces. Since they've bought these shares in your company, they can also get little bonuses, like if you make profits, you share them out with these shareholders. They can also vote on stuff that might affect the company. When you think about it, once you sell a lot of these shares, then these people sort of own the company. It's just that you run it, and you'd better run it well, otherwise they might vote someone else in and put them in charge. Your company is a cool little tech company. Other people think, hey, this might take off. I want a share of that. So these other people start buying these shares off of your neighbors and friends, offering them more money, because they think these shares of your company will be worth more in the future. It's far easier to do this on some sort of market rather than buying from your neighbors and friends directly. There's a market for these shares and shares of other companies. It's called the stock market. People buy and sell shares of companies on that market, depending on what's happening in the world. So, like, if a pandemic hits, they think, oh hey, loads of people will be staying at home, so they'll probably be watching a whole ton of Netflix. I bet Netflix will get loads of subscribers, so I'm going to buy Netflix shares because I think that's going to go up. So that's what they do. My general understanding of it is it works because everyone says it does, which I guess is true of money in general. How light is both a particle and a wave? People who train everyone around them terribly and then complain that nobody likes them. See also people that proudly say, yeah, I'm a jerk. I had an acquaintance that proudly and giddily said, I'm toxic. I left that guy pretty fast. How these dogs that have these dense bangs hanging over their eyes can see a single gosh darn thing. Well, they can't see much with them, but dogs rely much more on hearing and smell, so it shouldn't be a huge deal to them. But I'd bet they'd prefer being able to see. Although I think a lot of grooming styles where the eyes are covered are mostly for show dogs, and when they're not being shown, they have a little top knot. The existence of everything. Why do I trust myself to fail so much and like myself so little? Why do I hate positive attitude advice from other people? Because you're aware of all your flaws while being aware of only a fraction of other people's. So by comparison, you think you're worse. You're not worse, it's just that you can't hide your own flaws from yourself as well as other people can hide theirs from you. Existence and self-awareness. The more you think, the more the concept of I is creepy. It amazes me how much I can get lost in my own mind just thinking about how I'm thinking is possible. My conscience was ripped from the void and shoved into this body. Does it go back when I die? Is it nothingness or something more? Why I continue to procrastinate and self-sabotage. Just wanted to say a few things to help the people who asked. First, this wasn't supposed to be a cry for help. I'm fine. I was just in a bad mood yesterday when I wrote that. 2. Yes, I have ADD, depression, and anxiety. Anyone who suggested that may be the cause is correct. 3. I'm on meds and they help a ton. 4. If this comment rang true to anyone, I'd definitely recommend seeing a mental health professional. It can make a world of difference. And 5. Anyone who suggested it's because I'm lazy and not disciplined or any other thanks I'm cured type nonsense, you can go F yourself. Cryptocurrency. I've had it explained to me numerous times, but it still goes right over my head. We use money as a medium of exchange because it's hard to forge, meaning that you can't create an arbitrary amount of it because it's produced by governments, protected by governments, and is full of security features aimed at preventing forgery. Cryptocurrency is a way of producing something similarly hard to forge, but without requiring a government to regulate supply. It's just money, but stateless. Thank you. This is our second or third inclusion of this topic in the video because, to be honest, even with the prior explanations, I wasn't really getting it. And I'm still not sure I understand the algorithm part of it at all, but this at least breaks down why we've placed some value in this one thing. What was there before the Big Bang?
I think it was Scrubs, or How I Met Your Mother. Scrubs was funnier in my opinion though. But to give a serious answer, my money's on previous universes that collapsed in on themselves and then exploded out into ours ad infinitum. Unfortunately, we humans have developed the ability to ask questions outside of our universe that, by definition, can never be solved within it. Questions like, what is outside our universe? Or, what is there before? Was there before? Note that by universe, I mean everything in our reality that we can know. So if the multiverse theorem or many worlds are true, those extra spaces of information are included in what I'm calling universe. How to socialize? Like, what the frick? For me, it's all acting. Like, people who see me in crowds, at mixers, or networking or whatever would say I'm a natural, but really, it's a lot more like playing a character who's comfortable doing those things. As soon as I walk out of the room, my happy face just falls off and I'm exhausted. In real life, I have severe social anxiety. Diagnosed. Unlike 2 real close friends. If someone tries to strike up a conversation when I'm not expecting it, I'm probably a lot more rude than I mean to be. I really have to amp myself up playing that social character. Cruelty towards pets. Even just cruelty in itself is hard to understand, but like defenseless creatures, it makes me despair of humans.
Littering. Frickin' trash behavior. Honestly, I can't grasp this concept of throwing crap out of the window of a car. Wherever you're going, there'll be a trash can. It can wait. I'm looking at you, smokers.
People who idolize politicians, like, Jesus frickin' Christ, why?
If you want an actual answer, it's the same mechanics of why people idolize religious figures, YouTube stars, or everything they know but can't actually touch. Parasocial relationships. They feel like they're their best friends because the politicians say they care so much about them, when really it's a persuasion tactic for their ideology. Those realistic testes that some truck drivers have. It's so unnecessary that I don't know why anyone would put that on their vehicle.
I listened to a podcast about them once who interviewed the people that have them, the creators and stuff, and they more or less concluded that they are usually a gag gift, prank, or they're being used ironically.
Maths, as in all of it. It makes me super anxious, and then I get upset and give up. I'm 40 this year, and I can still be stressed out by someone mentioning maths.
I've played music for 20 plus years, and music theory just goes over my head. I know my major and minor scales, I know my chord structures, but putting it all together escapes me. I have people tell me my songs are cool or that they love how the chord pattern works backwards to the root, and I'm just like, I don't know, I just wrote it.
How people can be so hateful and for no reason. Like, I'm literally studying psychology, and it's at the point where I genuinely can't explain why some people are just nicer and more understanding of others. Everything I've learned has only made the answer harder, more complex, and ironically enough, more vague. If you told me, breaking news, humanity is really split into two species, and the deciding genetic factor is the ability to show empathy for people who aren't like you, I'd believe it in a heartbeat. Fighting is fundamentally stupid, intraspecies competition is universally harmful for every member of that species in the long run when resources aren't scarce, yet our species loves to create its own problems. Ridiculous.
I don't understand why adoption is so costly. If a child needs a home and someone is fit to raise them, why the added financial burden?
Private and international adoption can be costly, but we adopted our kids through an adoption agency that worked with our local county and was funded by the county. We ended up getting a foster kid who was in the final stages of being cleared for adoption. We had to pay maybe $150 in total. I don't even remember what those fees were for. The background check maybe? We had to make our house child-friendly and take something like 20 hours of classes and take another 8 or so of filling out a lot of paperwork. We had the ability to select all kinds of criteria for what kind of child we wanted, but we said that we'd take pretty much any kid who wasn't severely disabled, since we wouldn't be able to handle that. We got a 1-year-old child, but I found out later that teenagers are the hardest to get adopted and end up aging out of the foster care system before they can be matched with a family. It was worth it in the end, and the county ended up contacting us later, offering us the chance to adopt a biological sibling. We said yes. It's been 10 years now, and we've got a couple of great kids. Our process cost a lot of time, but little money. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all of the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.